In this realm, a sinister monolith known as the Tower of Malevolence, also whispered of as the harbinger of calamity, erupted into existence from absolute nothingness. With it, untold legions of demons and fiends burst forth, unleashing chaos upon all of humanity and casting them into an abyss of utter despair. The sheer scale of their onslaught was catastrophic, driving mankind to the very precipice of extinction. But then, the first generation of Awakened, hailed as the founders, rose to defy this dark tide. These godlike warriors fought back against a monstrous horde, and in a final, climactic battle, they triumphed. They obliterated the accursed tower itself. For the first time, humanity tasted victory against these invaders. From a different dimension, the founders were lauded as saviors, and their epic deeds were forever enshrined within the mausoleum of the founders. A century passes. A young boy, Kanagi Minato, sits in a quiet library, lost in a tome detailing these legendary champions. As he turns the page, he reads of a peerless swordsman who, armed with nothing but a mere wooden branch, single-handedly vanquished an army of 10,000. He uncovers the saga of a brilliant archmage, able to conjure world-shaking magic, without ever speaking a single incantation. However, in the modern age, these tales are now treated as simple myths or fantastical stories, a world away from the truth they once represented. Still, Kanagi dreams of etching his own name into legend. Just like the heroes of old, he possesses the seal of the chosen, an enigmatic crest that manifested upon his skin, and he swears to one day become worthy of this title. But reality is a cruel master. As his peers erupt in celebration over their results, Kanagi is frozen in his chair, his eyes locked on his device. The notification staring back confirms his deepest dread. He had once again failed the hunter's qualification exam, while joyous laughter echoes throughout the room. His own vision blurs with unshed tears. To twist the knife, his classmates start to taunt him, joking loudly about a party, then venomously suggesting he should just handle the garbage. As a fellow Awakened, he knew the test's simple secret. Just writing down a name would have guaranteed a pass. Yet despite knowing this, he has failed for 3 straight years, earning only scorn and a shameful label of a failure. This was his last possible chance. And with that chance now turning to dust, he accepts the bitter truth that becoming a hunter is a dream he can never achieve. Alone now, he quietly collects the celebratory confetti from the floor, his spirit crushed under the weight of his failure, earning a flawless score on the written portion. And pouring years into honing his aura control, it all meant nothing. His crest, the supposed mark of destiny, felt less like a blessing and more like a cruel joke. Girip a Tarashbi. The anger and sorrow finally boil over as a single wish escapes him. He just wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with the founders, to be respected, to be anything but a complete reject. A sudden voice shatters his miserable thoughts. It called his name, summoning him towards the academy gates. Jolted back to the present, he pauses before admitting that he'd completely forgotten. With a heavy sigh, he wishes, just for a moment, to be revered, to be praised, just like the famed A-rank hunter, Hizaki Kaisai. Waiting outside, a throng of students had already formed, whispering excitedly about Hizaki Kaisai and his sheer charisma, flashing a perfectly practiced smile. The man himself speaks to the students, apologizing for the disturbance he had created. In that moment, Hizaki's sycophants immediately target Kanagi, scolding him for his tardiness and for making their idol wait. Stuttering, he can only manage a pathetic, mumbled apology. But before things could go any further, Hizaki himself stepped in, coolly telling his lackeys to stand down. One of his followers desperately tries to justify himself, but Hizaki, with a forced, tight smile, subtly nods toward the news reporter's position close by. The mere sight of the press instantly silences any argument, and his underlings quickly bow in apology. One of the journalists then steps up to Hizaki, enthusiastically presenting him with a photograph, slated for the cover of a new documentary. The shot perfectly frames the instant he slew a dragon, with a single, flawless arc of his blade. When prompted for his reaction, Hizaki feigns a mixture of pride and slight embarrassment, saying that while it's an incredible photo, it still feels a little bit strange to see himself immortalized in such a dramatic fashion. Kanagi and Hizaki had joined the academy together 3 years ago, yet their destinies were carved on wildly different paths. Hizaki was hailed as a genius, effortlessly claiming the top scores in every discipline. While Kannagi was less than a shadow, a nobody, a convenient punching bag for Hizaki's cruel amusement. Now, condemned to spend a whole day with Hizaki for this documentary, Kannagi couldn't help but wonder why he had been dragged into this charade at all. A spark of intrigue lights up as a reporter gestures to Kannagi, asking who this person might be. Without a single pause, Hizaki turns as if to introduce him, only to stop and feign forgetfulness. Leaning casually towards one of his cronies, he whispers a quick, pointed question, demanding to know the boy's name. They inform him that it is Kannagi Minato. With a practiced nod, Hizaki repeats the name clearly, as if he knew it all along. He then claims that while Kannagi's scores aren't exactly stellar, he has a tendency to constantly ask for Hizaki's guidance, so much that it frequently disrupts his own personal training. This outrageous lie leaves Kannagi utterly speechless. His shock only deepens when Hizaki continues, telling the reporters that Kannagi also requires constant financial support. Kannagi knew the opposite was true. Hizaki had always stolen from him, never the other way around. It was a year filled with torment he could never forget, a hell of humiliation and sheer powerlessness. The press, completely mesmerized by Hizaki's false narrative, applaud him as a truly perfect role model, as if to seal his benevolent image. Hizaki suddenly grabs a hold of Kannagi and declares boldly for the cameras that he will soon ascend as a powerful awakener, fated to carve his own mark on the pages of history. The reporters pivot their focus back to Kannagi, assuming he must be overwhelmed by such noble charity. They urge him to give a statement, desperate to capture his moment of gratitude. Kannagi, about to expose this entire fabrication, is silenced when Hizaki leans in and hisses that he failed his exam, that he is utterly worthless. He pressures Kannagi, saying it's wise to just accept his fate and not make a scene. A painful, vice-like grip on his shoulder sends Kannagi's thoughts flashing back to the countless beatings he'd suffered before. Pure terror twists his face, and when he finally musters his voice, it is behind a hollow, strained smile. He claims he has no words to possibly express his gratitude. With that settled, Hizaki takes charge, steering the flow of the entire interview. Time is of the essence, he announces, and the interview must proceed. He directs them toward his trophy case, a glittering display that makes Kannagi's stomach turn. From over his shoulder, he overhears the quiet words of two reporters. One wonders if Kannagi's name is even important enough to include. The other scoffs at the very notion, stating that absolutely no one would care. In that single moment, Kannagi understands a harsh, undeniable truth, that only absolute power determines who is immortalized. Justice and morality mean nothing in this world. He fights back the hot tears, the ones threatening to fall as he tries to speak his own truth. But before he can compose himself, a sharp voice cuts in, yanking him out of his reverie. He turns to find Hizaki approaching with his usual followers. Without any preamble, Hizaki commands him to be at the founder's mausoleum after classes. Kannagi, still reeling from before, demands to know why. Hizaki, however, just grins before offering something unbelievable, a chance for him to retake his exam. This declaration shocks and befuddles Kannagi further. Hizaki promises he'll smooth things over with the association. When Kannagi asks what he wants in return, Hizaki makes it brutally clear. This is just another scheme to make himself look good. The documentary's grand finale sequence is scheduled to be filmed at the founder's mausoleum. Everything has to be captured on camera there, and the situation must be dealt with as such. Before walking away, Hizaki lays down one final condition, revealing that Kannagi has absolutely no other choice but to obey. As Kannagi stands there, attempting to make sense of it all, a vicious internal battle wages deep inside his soul. He despises being used as a simple pawn for Hizaki's publicity. But then again, this was a once-in-a-lifetime second chance. Despite the simmering rage, a small, hopeful smile touches his lips. He vows that this time, he absolutely will not fail. Later on, at the founder's mausoleum, the cameras begin to record as the last scene of the documentary begins. The shot focuses on Hizaki standing before the sacred grounds, delivering a final, epic proclamation. After the journalists conclude their interview with Hizaki, they offer him their sincerest thanks, stating they had managed to get a fantastic shot. Hizaki gives a charming reply, saying he looks forward to the article. When the reporters finally depart, Hizaki journeys deeper into the shrine, where his men are busy excavating something. He asks them if they found the secret entrance yet, to which they eagerly indicate a concealed passageway, asking if this is the one they've been looking for. Suddenly, a voice from behind them demands to know what they're doing. Hizaki casually turns, a look of amusement on his face, saying the person should have already pieced it all together. He announces they are on a glorious treasure hunt. The other figure, Kanagi, explodes with rage, branding Hizaki a vile grave defiler, and roaring, "Do you have any idea how sacred this resting place is?" Hizaki casually shrugs off the accusation, kicking over a statue of a legendary founder, and coldly stating that the dead are irrelevant. He declares that the chance to become unbelievably rich is far too good to ignore, dismissing the importance of the founder's remains as mere bones. Kanagi, visibly shaking with anger, shouts about the founder's revered status and screams his dream to follow in their footsteps. In a blind fury, he throws himself at Hizaki, but Hizaki sidesteps the clumsy charge with ease and plants a brutal fist deep into Kanagi's gut, sending him crumpling to the ground in agony. As Hizaki continues his vicious beatdown, one of his lackeys cuts him off, exclaiming they have unearthed something truly amazing. The man holds up a trove of ancient artifacts, including a round crystal that seems to pulse with an unholy power. Hizaki is absolutely overjoyed, yelling it could set him up for life without ever lifting a finger again. Kanagi, weakened and barely able to breathe, tries to stop them, but his attempts are completely futile. Hizaki grabs him by his collar and spells it out for him that he was simply using Kanagi from the very start. He admits that he had been manipulating Kanagi, fully aware of his constant trips to the library and his foolish dreams. Hizaki then cruelly declares that Kanagi has served his role as a disposable pawn in his master plan. Hizaki drags Kanagi away, mocking him about his pathetic desire to be a hunter. He lays out his final move: to pilfer the relics from the shrine and then vanish, pinning the entire blame on Kanagi. As Hizaki dangles Kanagi over a steep cliff edge, he sneers and asks for his name one final time, only to then dismiss it as worthless with a final, heartless farewell. Hizaki releases his grip, sending Kanagi to face his doom. Kanagi plummets into the dark river below, his mind racing as he wonders if this is how it all ends. His thoughts spiral through all his years of hard work, the endless exams, wondering if it was all for absolutely nothing. He feels his consciousness slipping, his very being about to fade without a single trace left on the world. But just as total darkness threatens to claim him, a mystical light envelopes his body. Spectral figures appear, their voices echoing all around him, speaking of a vessel and using Kanagi as one to grant their wish. They are none other than the heroic spirits, the legendary souls once sealed within that hallowed ground. Our boy is completely bewildered by these lights and sounds. Materializing from thin air, one spirit points at Kanagi's crest, identifying it as the crest of nothingness. They clarify that while it lacks any innate abilities, it holds the terrifying potential to absorb powers beyond belief. The spirits grant him a choice: forge a pact with one of them and become the master of a single legendary art, whether that be sorcery, swordsmanship, fortitude, or even alchemy. They demand that he choose which power he covets the most. For a fleeting moment, Kanagi considers a power similar to Hizaki's, but his conviction changes. He no longer wishes to be a cheap imitation. He desires a power that has no equal anywhere in existence, a might capable of washing away every ounce of shame he has ever known. When the spirits demand he make his choice, Kanagi roars that he wants all of it. He demands every last drop of their strength, refusing to be satisfied with anything less. The founders are completely stunned, calling his audacious wish impossible, as no mortal vessel could ever contain such a cataclysmic influx of power. Yet Kanagi screams at them and suddenly begins to absorb them all, drawing them inside of him. All the spirits are bewildered and shocked that a frail vessel like Kanagi has consumed every last one of them. From his vantage point on a nearby cliff, Hizaki sees an immense pillar of light erupt from the river. The water churns with impossible force, as if a bomb had just detonated beneath its surface. Mere moments later, Kanagi shoots out of the water, landing perfectly on the cliff before Hizaki and his goons. Kanagi's entire being now crackles with an immense aura, and his very presence feels completely transformed. One of Hizaki's men scoffs, mocking Kanagi for crawling back up like a common cockroach. Kanagi, completely unfazed, snaps off a small branch from a nearby tree and points it at them. They erupt in derisive laughter, asking if he seriously plans to challenge them with a simple stick. Hizaki, his patience wearing thin, orders his men to take Kanagi's head, making certain he won't be getting back up this time. One of the thugs, boasting he's an A-rank swordsman, steps up, pouring his battle aura into his blade. He smugly proclaims that Kanagi should be grateful to be slain by a warrior of his skill. In a blinding flash, the swordsman lunges towards Kanagi, his sharp steel cutting through the night air. But as he lands coolly behind Kanagi, something is terribly, terribly wrong. Blood begins to gush from the swordsman's own chest, as if he were the one who had been struck down. He lets out a blood-curdling scream, collapsing to the floor. Hizaki and his last remaining man can only stare in disbelief, completely unable to process what they had just witnessed. Kanagi stands there calmly, the small branch still in hand. He mocks the fallen swordsman, asking him to demonstrate the sword skills he was just bragging about. Hearing this, the remaining man begins to chant a spell, but before he can even finish the first word, Kanagi counters it with his own power. He summons the Thunderbolt Hadad spell without an incantation, and it slams directly into Hizaki's man, sending him crashing defeated to the ground. Hizaki is frozen with absolute shock, struggling to comprehend how Kanagi so easily dispatched his men. First, with nothing more than a simple twig, and now with powerful magic that needed no verbal component. The forgotten fables of old suddenly flood into his mind, the tales of a master swordsman who once defeated an army of 10,000 with only a stick, and of an archmage who could cast spells without a single word. These stories, long thought to be mere fantasy, were now being brought to life right before him. The very spirits of the founders, once sealed within the hallowed mausoleum, now resided inside of him. All 106 souls were now his. Of the legendary founders, Kanagi, remembering Hizaki's earlier claims about making his own legend, takes a single step forward. He proclaims that his name will never die, that he will be praised for all of eternity, and that a brand new myth begins with his very actions. As he advances, Hizaki desperately tries to deny the impossible truth, that Kanagi had truly absorbed the souls of the founders, all thanks to his crest of nothingness. Within Kanagi's consciousness, the founders roar with pure elation, reveling in the sweet taste of freedom they now possess. After being trapped for countless centuries, they excitedly argue over who gets to control Kanagi's body, treating it like a grand contest between the legendary spirits. The peerless swordsman, Hinoki Raishuru, speaks to Kanagi, stating he isn't surprised to be known after all this time. He asks what Kanagi plans to do now, writing Hizaki off as a complete nobody and guiding Kanagi's sight to a much more terrifying threat looming behind him. Kanagi, now fully composed, turns back to Hizaki, who stammers and shakes with fear, warning Kanagi to not dare disrespect an A-rank hunter. Without a single word, Kanagi delivers a devastating blow to Hizaki's jaw, sending him flying backwards through the air. Kanagi then shifts his focus to a sinister-looking bag that is bleeding a malevolent black aura. As he stares at it, a sudden blast of horrifying energy erupts from within, sending him stumbling back. Hinoki, however, is completely calm, a knowing smirk playing on his spectral lips. Elsewhere in the city, a monstrous three-headed wolf is causing untold destruction. A man yells out for someone named Kisaragi, pleading with him to deal with the rampaging beast. Kisaragi instantly engages the monster with a dancer's grace, positioning himself directly above the three-headed monstrosity and striking it down with a waterfall impact attack from the ground below. The citizens erupt into applause, in awe of his power to instantly fell an A-ranked beast. Kisaragi, who is an S-rank hunter, modestly receives their adoration, before asking where Hizaki might be. A man replies that Hizaki is probably busy with his interview, adding that it must be great to be called the young ho. Kisaragi dismisses the remark, stating that Hizaki's newfound fame will only help their guild's public image. As they start to leave to file their report and celebrate, a soul-crushing aura washes over the entire city, followed by a paralyzing, immense pressure. Chaos erupts as citizens begin to collapse, and even seasoned hunters buckle under the terrifying force. Kisaragi turns to see his comrades in agony, realizing that even A-rank and B-rank hunters are unable to resist the source of this incredible power. It becomes horrifyingly clear. An S-rank monster has appeared. On the streets, People faint under the immense pressure radiated from the mausoleum of the founders. Back in the forest, Hizaki, shaking and barely able to stand up, stares in pure horror as a colossal fiend emerges from the back. He stammers in complete terror, muttering if this is a demon and what it possibly could be. Kanagi explains that Hizaki's greed has broken the ancient seal, unleashing one of the boss-level fiends from the tower that had been imprisoned for centuries. Hizaki, witnessing the apocalypse he's unleashed, instantly understands the gravity of his actions. The theft of the sacred artifacts has shattered a legendary seal, allowing one of the tower's greatest nightmares to awaken once more. Hinoki, calmly analyzing the creature before them, identifies it in a heartbeat. It is the embodiment of emptiness, a threat rated far, far above S-rank danger. According to Hinoki, it can slaughter thousands of humans within just a few kilometers, with its toxic aura alone, and was a common sight in their era. Pure animal terror consumes Hizaki, who completely loses his mind and starts to flee for his life, screaming that staying here means certain death. Kanagi, however, understands how a predator thinks, and warns that any sudden movement will only lead to his doom. But his warning falls on deaf ears. The very second Hizaki breaks into a sprint, the monster lunges with horrifying, lightning-fast speed. It lashes out at Hizaki with its powerful tentacles. Hizaki barely has a moment to raise his sword in a feeble defense before the tentacle makes contact, impaling his chest as if it were paper, though he once felled a dragon with this very blade. It is absolutely useless against this ancient horror. The creature doesn't hesitate, spreading over Hizaki's body and draining his life force away. His tormented screams fill the entire forest. But Kanagi, who had already seen this coming, just calmly watches. Hinoki, standing right beside Kanagi, seizes this chance to place a hand on his shoulder and proposes that he be given absolute control over Kanagi's body. He asks if Kanagi wishes to witness his one-handed sword style. But before Kanagi can even consider the proposal, the other founders intervene, grabbing Hinoki by the hair, accusing Hinoki of trying to claim such a supreme vessel all for himself. Caught red-handed, Hinoki tries to defuse the entire situation, though it is no use. It is Kanagi who ends the squabble, laying out his own conditions. He will not yield control to any single one of them. His body will be a tool they must all share. He declares that he will one day surpass them all and reach their level, proving his own worth through sheer power alone. If they wish to borrow his physical form, they must first show him what true, godlike power is. Hinoki, shocked by Kanagi's sheer audacity, readies his legendary sword. Then, taking this golden opportunity, he takes the first step, merging his spirit with Kanagi's body, beckoning the other founders to join him, as Hinoki raises his blade. With him as a shadow, Kanagi mirrors the motion and targets the limbs of the monster. Hinoki's sword, now guided by the skill of another founder, severs one of the monster's massive arms in a single, clean cut. The beast roars and strikes back with a furious swing. But Kanagi, now infused with the power of yet another founder, dodges with impossible, superhuman speed. Layer upon layer of power builds inside him, each founder taking a turn to guide his every move. The old master's ancient power allows him to grab the creature's own massive tentacles and use its own weight to slam into the ground. The monster is sent soaring by the powerful blows, as Kanagi snatches a bough from the ground, allowing him to riddle the monster with arrows. He then unleashes every skill in his new arsenal, including a whirlwind of fire and devastating breath and ice attacks. Hinoki seizes control, once again, picking up Hizaki's shattered sword from the dirt, just as the fiend tries a sneak attack from below. Kanagi's eyes flash gold as the great wizard spirit takes command, electrocuting the beast in the middle of its attack. With one final, mighty leap, Kanagi soars high above the monster, and Hinoki, now in command, unleashes his legendary one-handed sword art, the Gekiru Tachi wave-cutting blade, slicing the demon clean in two and ending its reign of terror. A triumphant grin spreads across Kanagi's face as the fiend collapses. Meanwhile, perched silently on a distant tree, a single raven has witnessed the entire battle. Somewhere else in the city, a man atop a skyscraper answers his phone, stunned to learn the S-rank monster has already been vanquished before he could even arrive. He asks if there were any other high-level hunters in the area, and the voice on the other end of the line confirms that, according to the footage captured by the Raven, It was an academy student who performed this impossible feat. The man, Chihiro Midori, the world's strongest awakened, expresses a keen interest in meeting this student. The following morning, Midori sits casually atop a mountain of monster corpses, making a call to the academy's headmaster. He tells him about the S-rank monster's defeat, but clarifies that it wasn't him who did it. Based on the Raven surveillance, it was none other than Kannagi who slayed the beast. Midori finds this almost impossible to believe, considering Kannagi's legendary record of failing the hunter's exam 3 consecutive times. He then asks for a small favor from the headmaster. Back at the academy grounds, students are buzzing with rumors about yesterday's incident. The overwhelming aura had paralyzed nearly everyone, and now they're all guessing who could have defeated the monster. One student jokes around with his buddy, boasting that he was the one who defeated it. But his friend quickly shuts that idea down, reminding him that it's been a decade since the last S-rank hunter had ever appeared. However, the gossip spreading says that the slayer is truly a student from their own academy. Kannagi, using a stick as a makeshift cane, shuffles across the campus, his entire body shaking. He listens to all the conversations, amazed that the battle has become the only thing anyone is talking about. Suddenly, someone bumps into him hard, knocking him right off his feet. The student scoffs at the absurd idea that a loser like Kannagi could be the S-rank. The truth is, he had vanquished the demon, but only by surrendering his flesh to the founders. Now, his very bones scream from the backlash of their mind. As he fights to get back up, a sharp voice rings out in his consciousness, taunting him. It is Hinoki, reminding him of his vow to eclipse them all. Hinoki's voice is a sharp mix of challenge and motivation, daring Kannagi to master himself and ascend to a higher plane. Kannagi remembers his oath from the night before, and answers with a quiet, steely resolve, reaffirming his unshakable will. He forces his body to obey, commanding it to stand against the searing, residual pain. Hinoki, the spirit within, lets out a low chuckle, telling him to prove his bold words. As Hinoki surveys the students milling around them, he cannot suppress a wave of sheer disappointment. The so-called awakeners of this age are no mightier than common folk, a pathetic shadow of the warriors from his own time. He thinks that if the tower were to ever rise again, this fragile world would surely face its final reckoning. But then, his thoughts are shattered as he detects an immense aura close by. Kannagi senses Hinoki's abrupt change in focus and asks, "What is it?" But Hinoki quickly dismisses the feeling. Even so, he can't ignore the sheer scale of the power he just felt. Just then, a professor shouts for Kannagi, ordering him to come over immediately. Kannagi, thinking it's about his inevitable expulsion letter, shuffles toward him with dread. He knows all too well that he has squandered his 3 attempts to pass the hunter's qualification exam, and this final failure means starting his life over. To his utter shock, the professor commands him to the field for a retest. The words leave Kannagi completely floored, as a second chance like this is simply impossible. Meanwhile, students crowd around the windows, whispering in frantic disbelief. No one can remember a time a hunter re-exam was ever held. On the field, Kannagi takes his position for the sprint. His body is still far from recovered, but he is burning with the need to succeed. The opening trial is a 100-meter dash. The average time to pass is 3.6 seconds. The academy record sits at 2.7 seconds. The very same student who shoved him earlier mocks Kannagi, calling him a loser as he takes off. The students can only stare dumbfounded as he blows past the finish line in just 1.2 seconds. The next challenge is a 3,000-meter run. The average time is 4 minutes and 20 seconds, with the current record at 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Kannagi obliterates their expectations once more, finishing the race in 1 minute and 17 seconds. The trials that follow, push-ups, bench press, and more, all end in the same result. Kannagi demolishes every single record, often by more than doubling the previous score. The students are left completely speechless, some now looking at him with newfound admiration. Kannagi himself wonders if the founders are secretly helping him, but Hinoki confirms this is his own power, completely unassisted. Inside the headmaster's quarters, Midori is given Kannagi Minato's entire academic file. As he scans through the pages, he cannot help but be amazed by Kannagi's monstrous physical stats. The headmaster, however, voices his grave reservations about this whole reevaluation. While Kanagi's physical might is now beyond question, the real problem has always been his magical potential. In every single magical test over the last 3 years, his mana signature has registered as an absolute 0, making him completely and utterly unable to use magic. The headmaster had already written off the possibility of Kanagi ever becoming a student worthy of this academy. Midori's assistant, looking completely unfazed by this information, confirms this is the result they expected. Yet, a smirk plays on Midori's lips. He hints that this story might not end the way they think. Back out on the training field, Kanagi readies himself for the final trial, magic measurement. The professor in charge of the test explains the rules. He must channel all of his mana into a giant fan and make it spin within a 30-second time limit. The total number of rotations will be his final score. The average passing score stands at 1,513 spins, while the all-time academy record is 4,022. As Kanagi prepares himself, the ghosts of his past failures haunt him, no matter how hard he had tried in the past. The fan had never once moved, not even a single millimeter. His total inability to feel mana had always been his curse. But today was different. For the very first time, he could feel it flowing within him, starting from the sole of his right foot. It spiraled up through his entire being before return. He instinctively knew his own breathing could control its flow, allowing him to unleash this raw power from his right hand. As the professor gives the signal to begin the test, Kanagi unleashes all of his mana in a single blast. The massive fan explodes into motion at a blinding speed. The digital counter glitches, unable to keep up with the acceleration, and the sheer hurricane force of the wind makes it impossible for anyone to even read the numbers. The velocity climbs far beyond anyone's imagination, and before a single person can react, the entire machine completely overloads. Now totally ripped from its housing, the fan shoots across the field like a buzzsaw. Students scream in terror as it rockets toward the main school building, slamming directly into the headmaster's office with a deafening boom. Inside, the headmaster barely dodges the deadly projectile, collapsing to the floor from the sheer terror of the event. Midori's assistant, paralyzed by the sheer spectacle, can hardly believe what has just unfolded before her. Meanwhile, Midori, completely unmoved by the chaos, simply lets out a chuckle. To him, the parallels between Kanagi's power and his own are unmistakable. According to Midori, there has only ever been one other person besides Kanagi to ever record an immeasurable mana score. And that person was himself, the professor, still trying to make sense of the absolute destruction he just witnessed, announces that Kanagi has officially passed the hunter examination. A massive wave of excitement explodes through the student body as they erupt in cheers. Not only has Kanagi broken every record, but he has completely shattered all expectations. Staring down at his own hands, Kanagi trembles with disbelief. He had spent his entire life thinking he was incapable of magic, yet this incredible power was inside of him the entire time. From the sidelines, Hinoki watches the scene with a quiet pride, having known this outcome was inevitable. Meanwhile, Kanagi understands that his life has now changed forever. By offering his body as a vessel for the founders, he has finally unlocked the sleeping potential hidden deep within him. All this time, Hinoki can't help but laugh to himself, remarking that the boy before him is anything but ordinary, with the crest of nothingness sealing his destiny. It is as if he's been waiting for this exact moment for a century. Before he can finish that very thought, a suffocating, immense presence descends upon them, sending a powerful shock wave through the entire area. The sheer force of it leaves him stunned into silence. His mind races to comprehend this sudden explosion of power, but Hinoki recognizes the overwhelming aura instantly. It is the same one he had sensed earlier that very morning. Standing right before him, as if summoned from the pressure itself, is the legendary hunter, Midori. Kanagi, seeing him, is paralyzed. He is the strongest hunter alive. Midori lands and begins to speak to him directly. Midori praises his incredible scores in the hunter examination, offering him words of true acknowledgement. But Kanagi can barely even form a coherent sentence. Midori then presents a brand new trial before him, calling it one final additional test. Midori demands that Kanagi land a single blow on him, the world's most powerful hunter. Hearing this, Kanagi is frozen in place, his mind reeling. Midori, 23 years of age, a man who had achieved the rank of a full-fledged hunter at the unbelievable age of 9, now stood before him. His achievements were mythical, unrivaled in the modern era. He had reduced thousands of demons to dust in a heartbeat. His power was so absolute that no other hunter would even dream of challenging him. 10 years prior, he single-handedly quelled the pandemonium outbreak, and 5 years ago, he suppressed the outbreak of Kyushu. He was a walking, breathing singularity. As Midori lays out the terms of his test, Kanagi is still locked in total disbelief. However, Hinoki is absolutely thrilled, demanding Kanagi surrender his body to him at once. Yet, Midori explains the rules in the plainest possible way. Kanagi had exactly 1 minute to land a hit. Whether he won or he lost, there would be no repercussions whatsoever. Midori himself would only strike back once every 10 seconds, guaranteeing that the challenge was completely fair. There was no need for him to hold back, no need for any doubt. Any ability, any weapon, was now at Kanagi's complete disposal, while Midori would swear not to use any of his own. To prove his honesty, Midori then summons a massive cache of weapons, offering Kanagi the pick of anything he could possibly want. The sheer spectacle of so many legendary arms materializing at once only heightened the unbelievable nature of this challenge. A storm of confusion still raged in Kanagi's mind. He understood that he was about to face the infamous Midori in a one-on-one duel. Still hesitating, he paused before finally asking if he was truly allowed to use any weapon. In reply, Midori casually retrieves a fine katana, his grip relaxed but absolute. With almost no effort, he shatters the blade clean in two, as if it were made of nothing more than glass. He declares, without a shred of arrogance, that his very flesh is sharper than any forged steel. Kanagi barely had a second to register this feat before Hinoki's patience finally snapped. Pure rage burned in his voice as he roared to take control, refusing to stand for Midori's absolute, overwhelming confidence. His fury boiled over as he bellowed that such words from Midori were unforgivable. Kanagi could feel Hinoki's spirit practically vibrate, his power intensifying, as if he were about to unleash his entire terrible might. It became clear to him in that one instant that Midori's power was equal to that of the founders themselves. Against a being of that magnitude, he stood absolutely no chance of winning. Yet, as that truth sunk in, he knew there was no more time to wait. Meanwhile, the students had all gathered to witness the fight. Without another word, Midori starts the official countdown. A faint, amused smile touches his lips as he signals the test start. Kanagi snatches a sword and lunges straight at Midori, determined to strike first. Hinoki scoffs, asking if he plans to fight this battle alone, protesting that it isn't fair. But Kanagi shuts him out and continues his charge. Even though he knew his attempts were hopeless, he understood that to forge his own legend, he had to fight with his own two hands, not just borrow the power of the legendary founders. He brings his blade down hard on Midori, but Midori sidesteps the attack with barely a flicker of movement. Even as Kanagi launches a furious barrage of attacks, Midori remains glued to his phone, casually asking what social media he uses and noted that this incident is definitely going to be recorded and go viral. The students watch with wide-eyed disbelief, astounded that Midori can evade every single strike without even bothering to take the fight seriously. Though Kanagi continues his desperate, relentless assault, one student sees something strange about his technique. As they all watch closer, Kanagi raises his sword, faking a downward slash before instantly changing to a horizontal one, aiming for both Midori's feet and his throat. The maneuver is executed perfectly, and Kanagi is shocked at how effortlessly his own body is moving. He realizes he isn't even tired. He wonders if this is a side effect of lending his body to the founder's incredible power. His thoughts are cut short when Midori places a single finger on his forehead, preparing to simply flick him, and nonchalantly states that 10 seconds have now passed. Kanagi barely dodges the attack, but the shockwave Midori creates completely annihilates the field. Seeing the raw destruction, Kanagi knows that if that attack had actually hit him, his entire head would be gone. Midori looks at his own hand, a bit confused, sensing absolutely no malice coming from Kanagi, and wonders if he had perhaps misjudged his own strength. Pure terror seizes Kanagi as he knows he will die at this rate. Desperately, he tries to remember the feeling of his more powerful self. As he concentrates, a massive aura explodes from his body, catching even Midori by surprise. Kanagi unleashes another ferocious attack, his speed accelerating exponentially. The students are in total shock, yelling that the camera can't even track their movements anymore. Midori recognizes the change in Kanagi's entire presence and wonders if there is a special trigger for this hidden power, or if Kanagi is intentionally holding it all back. Knowing another 10 seconds have already passed, Midori decides to hit Kanagi with a light tap. This time he crouches down, positioning his finger for another simple flick, but instead he taps Kanagi right in the chest, sending him flying into the building wall. Kanagi coughs up blood, but he finds the feeling exhilarating. He marvels at the fact he's fighting the world's most powerful, awakened being. He knows that if his body were as weak as it was yesterday, he would have been instantly killed by that single blow. This fact brings a small smile to his face, knowing this means he is actually becoming stronger. However, he also understands that his current level of skill is not nearly enough to pass this test. Resolute, he chooses to just push forward with sheer power and charges at Midori one final time. Suddenly, Midori is standing right next to him with impossible speed, forcing Kanagi to stop dead in his tracks. Apologizing, Midori tells him he has seen all he needs to see. He then states that the 30 seconds are now up, before striking Kanagi on the back of his neck, causing him to slowly black out. As Kanagi falls, Midori muses that he is without a doubt a genius, but not on the same level as his powerful comrades. In the end, Kanagi was unable to tap into the true power Midori had sensed. Calling his assistant, he tells her that they are heading back, voicing his slight disappointment with the final result. Just then, Kanagi's body grabs his sword, and Midori instantly senses a terrifying aura erupt from behind him. Midori looks back and sees Kanagi's body glowing with raw power. Hinoki, now speaking through Kanagi's mouth, smirks that the stubborn child is finally unconscious, allowing him to at last take the reins. Taking a single step, Hinoki suggests they prolong their little duel a bit longer. Meanwhile, Kanagi's spirit, now hovering outside his own body, panics as he sees Hinoki in control. Yet, Midori simply wears a grin, recognizing the colossal presence he had felt from the start. He wonders if this is an entirely new person, or simply a skill he has never seen before. Regardless, he knows one thing for certain. Kanagi has now become a true monster. Kanagi, now under Hinoki's command, suddenly unleashes an attack, yelling at Midori not to just stand there. Midori immediately notices his entire fighting style has changed. His speed and power have reached an entirely new dimension. Suddenly, a sword is inches from Midori's face, and he ducks just in the nick of time to avoid it. Kanagi swings again, forcing Midori to leap back to create some space. Still reeling, Midori watches on, as Kanagi expertly positions his blade for another strike. He swings once more, but Midori ducks just under the attack, causing it to strike the building right behind him instead. The students inside scramble away in a panic, realizing the immense danger. Midori notes that Kanagi's attacks have become completely erratic, but he can still somehow predict the flow of his movements. It is reminiscent of a forgotten, ancient swordsmanship, like an unending, raging river of steel. Raising his own hand, Midori laughs and remarks that this level of power is needed to beat an S rank. He then prepares his hand once again, planning to put Kanagi down for good. Once again, noting that only 40 seconds have passed. However, Kanagi suddenly lunges forward with incredible, blinding speed, swinging his blade and roaring that Midori will not be able to land a hit. Midori fluidly leaps back to dodge the furious attack, laughing as he praises Kanagi's impressive sword skills. The students can scarcely believe the sight before them, as Midori is now completely on the defensive. Kanagi roars that Midori is being boring, and demands that he stop holding back his power. He warns Midori that if he dares to look down on him, he will beat him senseless without a moment's hesitation. Kanagi soars through the air to attack, but Midori just laughs and says, "Understood," with a single, sharp kick. Midori sends a rock flying towards the weapons behind him. In an instant, the entire arsenal floats into the sky. He leaps up, catching Kanagi completely off guard, and snatches one of the weapons hovering high above them. Excitedly, Kanagi shouts that Midori is finally getting serious. They then clash in a furious, mid-air spectacle, their feet meeting with explosive force. stunning the students who can only watch in awe. They grab every single weapon within their grasp, shattering them into a million pieces with their sheer might. Meanwhile, deep within Kanagi's own consciousness, the founders watch as Hinoki unleashes his true power. They are amazed that Midori can actually keep up with him. The old man's spirit suggests they all join the battle, but another founder immediately scolds him, calling him a complete fool. The great wizard, who has been watching in silence, suddenly realizes that Kanagi has been observing Hinoki's moves and is trying to learn from them. He sees Hinoki change his center of gravity as he lunges from below, but the sword in his hands shatters yet again. Frustrated with the pathetic quality of the weapon, Hinoki feels a surge of pure rage. Midori, on the other hand, finds this entire battle both thrilling and incredibly fun. However, he quickly sees that there are no more swords left and wonders if Kanagi will now switch to using firearms. With a challenging smirk, Midori yells that only 10 seconds are left and tauntingly asks what Hinoki plans on doing now. Hinoki glances at the building behind him before soaring toward it. He flies right for the very man who had bullied Kanagi earlier and rips the sword from his hands. Just then, Midori lunges closer, throwing a punch straight for Hinoki. The impact creates a massive explosion against the building. Fortunately, Hinoki dodges just in time and reappears before Midori. They continue their epic mid-air clash, trading countless blows. Midori roars that the fight is amazing and suggests they keep going just a little longer. Meanwhile, the students realize the entire building is about to collapse. As the battle rages on towards the rooftop, Midori's assistant watches on with a bored expression. Midori then puts his hand on a huge fan and rips it free, causing massive cracks to form along its surface. He tears the fan from the roof and hurls it at Hinoki. With a powerful throw, he sends it hurtling straight toward him. However, he is completely shocked when Hinoki, unleashing his one-handed sword technique, slices the fan into perfect cubes with his legendary dice-style sword art. The fan explodes into 1,000 tiny pieces, and Midori roars with excitement, praising Hinoki's incredible skill. However, Hinoki doesn't hesitate and hurls his sword right at Midori. To his horror, the blade shatters on impact. Midori raises his palm, aiming it straight at him, and coolly states that 60 seconds have now passed, before striking Hinoki with his open hand, sending him plummeting toward the ground. Hinoki lets out a curse, but before he can do anything, Kanagi suddenly appears on his back and shoves him back towards the other founder spirits. As Midori's final blow draws near, Kanagi manages to redirect it with a soft, flowing motion, successfully deflecting the final attack. This completely unexpected move leaves both Hinoki and Midori speechless. However, the sheer force of the blow shatters one of Kanagi's arms. Despite that, he stays locked on his one and only goal and lands a solid punch right on Midori's jaw with his good hand. From the inside, the battle between these titans feels like an eternity, a brutal war waged over a single, decisive moment, much like a grandmaster chess game between two equal gods. Despite its intensity, Hinoki knows it lasted for just 1 second. Watching with a quiet, immense pride, he realizes that Kanagi has just forged a new path to victory. Kanagi, however, is completely devastated when he sees Midori stop his punch just in time. Frustration consumes him as he understands he failed to land a clean blow. But then, to his complete astonishment, Midori smiles and intentionally pulls Kanagi's fist into his own face, acknowledging his incredible effort without any hesitation. He confirms that Kanagi has officially passed. Before either of them can do anything else, both of them collapse onto the hard ground. The students who witnessed the battle whisper in confusion, struggling to understand what had just transpired. Midori, still cradling Kanagi's unconscious form, calls out for his assistant, Rin, and informs her that it is time to leave. Rin appears at his side and asks about the final result. Midori confirms that Kanagi did indeed pass and admits he finds him quite interesting. However, he also states that he accidentally shattered Kanagi's arm and asks Rin to please heal him. She agrees to do so without question. The students, who hear their conversation, can't believe that Kanagi has actually won. The amazing truth finally sinks in, and a massive cheer erupts from the entire area. That Kanagi somehow managed to land a blow on Midori. The loud noise brings Kanagi back to consciousness, and as Rin begins her healing magic, she tells him to please not move. He follows her orders, thanking her, and she congratulates him on passing his final test. Kanagi, still completely shocked, Sits molto proit, asking if he truly managed to land a punch on Midori. Before he can even finish that thought, Midori suddenly appears right next to him, amused by his stunned reaction. Without wasting another second, Midori declares that a pass is a pass. He admits that he had to take the fight seriously. Halfway through his incredible, non-stop attack, Midori continues, praising Kanagi's amazing skill, commending his ability to dodge his most powerful move and his truly impressive movements. He tells Kanagi to take immense pride in his victory. Kanagi, finally regaining his composure, accepts the high praise without any hesitation. He then focuses on what comes next, eager to know what happens now that he has passed. His question leaves Rin a bit confused as she turns to Midori, who is also just as uncertain, and searches his mind for an answer. Later that evening, Kanagi, now at home, helps his mother with the cleaning. As she gets food ready in the kitchen, she nonchalantly asks how many visitors will be coming over, and Kanagi, still not quite sure, says he thinks it will only be one. His mother thinks about the day's events, remarking that it was a truly historic occasion. Not only had Kanagi passed the hunter's qualification exam, but he had also gained the attention of the great Midori. She states her absolute faith in her son's power, believing that he was always able to accomplish anything through sheer hard work. Kanagi listens with a quiet gratitude, acknowledging his mother's words. However, his mother's happy expression soon changes as she voices her worries about such a famous person coming to their home, suggesting he might think it's a doghouse. Kanagi, exasperated, quickly brushes off that ridiculous idea, insisting that Midori is not the kind of person to care about that. After finishing all his chores and helping his mother, he finally crashes on his own bed, his mind still replaying the unbelievable events of the day. His eyes land on the business card Midori had given to him, and a sense of deep unease fills his heart. He finds himself wondering why Midori hadn't just forgotten about the whole situation. His mind flashes back to the end of the battle earlier that day, remembering the moment when Rin had taken Midori to the ground, twisting his leg. He clearly remembers Midori's scream of pain as Rin had pinned him. At that moment, Midori had reminded Kanagi of his earlier words, saying that he had agreed to become one of his teammates. Upon his victory, Kanagi, completely bewildered, had denied ever saying such a thing. Rin, becoming more and more annoyed, had tightened her painful grip on Midori's leg. Midori told Kanagi that there were too many people around and suggested coming to his home that night to talk things over. In detail, he promised he would explain all the available options and reveal who their true enemies were. Kanagi wonders who these so-called enemies could be, knowing the tower was already destroyed by the founders, and that the current generation of hunters is tasked with killing the monsters that escape from the dimensional rifts. He wonders if there is some other reason, but soon falls into a deep sleep. Suddenly, Hinoki's shouting jolts him wide awake. He sees Hinoki and all the other founders standing in his room. Confused, he asks why they're all there and what happened, but Hinoki just says that they were discussing something important. Bewildered, Kanagi instinctively shields his body and fearfully asks if they've chosen who will claim his vessel. But before Hinoki can even answer, the chime of the doorbell shatters the tension. Kanagi, certain it is Midori, says they must continue this later. He makes his way toward the door, sensing an unnatural darkness and a chilling, ominous feeling. To his absolute horror, he finds his mother collapsed on the floor. Panic seizes him as he screams out her name, lunging towards her, but he freezes when he sees a figure seated in the kitchen. The intruder is casually eating the meal his mother made, praising its taste while ignoring the chaos he caused. With a venomous tone, the man states that Kanagi really needs to train his mother and says that if he wants to serve guests, they should at least buy higher quality ingredients. Kanagi roars, demanding to know who this man is and what vile thing he has done to his mother. The man, completely unfazed, yells at him to mind his manners, introducing himself as Haitani Goru, an S-rank hunter and a supposed comrade of Midori. Haitani then commands Kanagi to pack his bags, announcing they are relocating to the guild's base. Pure fury erupts inside Kanagi, and without a second thought, he unleashes a furious punch at Haitani. But Haitani evades it with ease and appears right behind him, sneering if Kanagi is truly challenging him. Kanagi is silent, his mind flashing back to his mother's words, how she had sworn to raise him by herself, with dignity after his own father had died. He sees the tattered old shoes she always insisted on wearing, telling him he should buy himself some new shoes instead. He remembers her congratulating him just hours ago, vowing to cook his favorite tonkatsu to celebrate. With a fire in his eyes, Kannagi glares at Haitani and roars, demanding to know what he did to his mother. Hinoki, analyzing the entire situation, identifies Haitani as an S-rank hunter from the old generation. Annoyed by this pale imitation of a true warrior, Hinoki declares that it is now time to get serious. The founders, having seen Kannagi's duel with Midori, now understand how they must handle him from now on. Haitani, looking amused, mocks Kannagi, calling his furious expression rather adorable. He lifts his hand, preparing to strike him, but Kannagi stands his ground, completely unshaken. As the blow comes closer, Kannagi fluidly intercepts Haitani's hand and with impossible strength flings him around. The ancient founder is shocked, recognizing the move from their old wars against the demons. Suddenly, Haitani is sent flying through the window, smashing through the wall in the backyard. Yet Haitani lands perfectly on his feet before he hits the dirt. Finding his balance, Haitani stalks forward, trying to process what just occurred. He asks himself if that was the art of Aikido. He recalls Kannagi's battle with Midori that very afternoon. He had noticed not just Kannagi's incredible aura and swordplay, but also a different, mysterious power. He acknowledges Haitani's surprising durability, noting that he's much tougher than Hizaki was. Kannagi, his patience completely gone, demands that he answer. He presses Haitani to confess what he did to his mother, who is still inside, writhing as a dark poison spreads through her veins. Haitani just laughs, scoffing that Kannagi seems to not understand. Then with a wicked grin, he finally reveals the horrifying truth. His mother was in his way, so he simply put her to sleep with a toxin. Haitani grins, adding that if she's fortunate, she might only have a few minor side effects. He remains calm, saying that he doesn't understand, making Haitani look at him with confusion. He then asks why they would hurt the family of a person who is supposed to become their new comrade. Haitani just scoffs at the very word comrade before appearing right behind him in a flash, ready to strike. He narrowly dodges Haitani's assault, but the brutal, non-stop attack continues. While attacking, Haitani screams that he will never be their equal, as he is nothing more than a tool to obey their every order. He mocks him, saying that once his family becomes a hostage, he will have no other choice but to obey them, calling him a fool. Before he can even move, Haitani stomps on his foot and slices him, sneering and asking if he was correct. He quickly puts some distance between them, feeling the sharp, burning pain on his cheek. As he touches it, he realizes the poison is already taking hold. Haitani grins, showing off his fingers, now covered with sharp, poison-laced needles. He taunts that it's already coursing through his veins. He then boasts that he can create dozens of different poisons from his own body, called Phantom Bug's poison, a deadly vision. Complaining about how annoying this mission is, Haitani says that if he really wanted to, he could unleash a lethal toxic mist over a 5-kilometer radius. But doing something like that in a city is not an option. He says the poison will end his life in 60 seconds, unless he swears allegiance to their organization. In that case, Haitani will give him the antidote. If not, he will surely die. He thinks about the sheer deadliness of Haitani's power, understanding that for any normal human, it would be an absolute and unavoidable death. Looking down at his own hand, he calls out to the god of medicine, Valentine, asking if she is currently present inside of him. The other founders all turn their attention towards Valentine, who seems both startled and completely confused, apologizing for calling on her without any warning. He asks if she can teach him later how to cure this poison. Stuttering, she says that she can. Haitani, growing impatient, throws another volley of poison needles at him, while demanding to know what foolishness he is muttering. He dodges with ease, explaining that the Aikido move he used before was borrowed from the god of hands himself. Kudohuma, the old man's spirit inside him, is stunned, realizing that he had perfectly copied his technique after seeing it for only a single, fleeting moment. He then calls upon the 10,000 army slasher, Hinoki, the blue spear of destruction, Shimmer Kulkis, and a heavenly bow Margin. He announces that he has studied and perfectly memorized them all from the ancient records. He tells Haitani that the founders he once worshipped now all reside within his very soul. This leaves Haitani speechless, but instead of being afraid, Haitani becomes absolutely furious, roaring that he will show him a world of unending pain. Haitani lunges at him with his poison needles extended. He leaps backward just in time, dodging the attack as Haitani's strike hits a nearby tree, and the tree instantly withers and turns to dust. Without pausing, Haitani launches another furious assault, screaming that if he gets on his knees and begs, he might just give him an antidote to ease the agony. He warns that once the pain takes over, he will never be the same again. His very mind will be lost to insanity. But he remains perfectly still, waiting as Haitani's hand gets closer. Just as Haitani is about to strike, he fluidly dodges to the side, placing his own palm flat against Haitani's chest, and unleashes the fist of Saint Wantak. Haitani vomits blood from the devastating impact, shocking Wantak himself deep inside him. The sheer power sends Haitani flying into a street lamp. Without a moment's pause, he follows up with a kick, using the feet of light, aileron, sending Haitani rocketing into the far distance. Eilerson, the spirit residing inside him, is stunned by this incredible display. However, Haitani manages to stand, recovering with impossible speed. In a flash, he appears right in front of him again, attacking with both of his hands. He manages to weave through his frantic attack, shattering some of his needles and using the sharp beak coral attack, slamming his fingers into Haitani's gut. Kannagi then tears into Haitani with the dragon's claw. Rowan's skill, leaving Rowan completely stunned and amazed. Inside him, Haitani grabs him and unleashes the flipper of lilac, throwing Haitani around in the air. Floating, he wonders when the world is happening. He knows that his poison should be clouding his mind, and it should have already destroyed his entire nervous system. But Kannagi is still moving perfectly, strong, and completely unharmed. Kannagi unleashes the megas of truth, Melch's Silentius, and blasts it directly at Haitani, causing a colossal energy explosion that leaves everyone stunned. Hinoki asks the other founders if they just saw that, and he tells them that right after beating Haitani, Kannagi began to perfectly copy all of their techniques, both their physical arts and their magic. He adds that he doesn't care where Kannagi's power comes from, be it the crest of nothingness, but he finds him to be incredibly interesting. The founders all agree. Hinoki suggests they should train Kannagi. He believes that if the founders themselves train him, he will become the single strongest awakener. Somewhere else, high up on the rooftops, cloaked figures are running and leaping. One of the figures tells everyone to move faster, revealing that Nemo's guilds are also targeting Kannagi, so they must hurry up and capture him before they can. Suddenly, Midori is standing right behind him, asking if there are really this many of them. The man is terrified, and Midori coolly tells him that if there are 15, then he must be the very last one. He places a single finger near the man's head, flips him over, and slams him face first onto the building's roof. Midori calls Rin through his raven's telepathy, and she picks up on the first ring, telling him that she has just arrived. She confirms that no other awakeners are in the area, but her next words completely catch him off guard. Someone else had already gotten there first. Midori is completely silent, waiting for her to elaborate. Rin then informs him that the intruder was Haitani, an S-rank hunter who is a legendary master of poison. He had come to recruit Kannagi, but had been completely defeated. Midori's eyes drift down to the roof where Haitani is lying, sprawled out, his mouth hanging open, making Midori wonder what had transpired. A little while later, they all arrive back at Kannagi's home. Midori claps his hands together once, a huge grin on his face as he praises Kannagi. He expresses his complete and utter admiration, admitting that he never imagined Kannagi could take down an S-rank. Without wasting a breath, he asks if Kannagi was exposed to the toxin. Kannagi scratches the side of his cheek and offers a quiet, almost sheepish reply. Both he and his mother are completely fine. Hinoki crosses his arms, looking unimpressed. He reminds Kannagi that without Valentine's divine intervention, he wouldn't have survived the entire night. At the sound of her own name, Valentine groans, completely exhausted, only for Hinoki to praise her for her swift work. He says that finishing her work in just 5 seconds is incredible. Valentine shrugs it off, saying that it was not that hard. With the poison's creator just lying there, all she needed were a few well-placed stabs to get the necessary blood samples and create the perfect antidote. Midori sighs, turning his focus back over to Kannagi, apologizing for arriving on the scene so late. He tells him that he has already dealt with all of the other organizations, now hunting him because of the footage from today's events. Kannagi, still trying to absorb everything, finally asks the question that's been bothering him. He asks if Haitani was telling the truth when he said he was Midori's comrade. Midori shakes his head without any hesitation, confirming that it was a complete lie. He adds that there are countless people who use his name for their own selfish reasons. With that cleared up, he turns his attention back to Rin. He asks her if she's all done, and right on cue, she appears at his side and nods. She tells him that all of the damage has been fully repaired. Kanagi's eyes go wide with shock as he looks at his own house. His window and backyard wall now looking brand new. Midori then, with a warm and friendly smile, suggests they all go inside and talk about Kanagi's future. Kanagi, standing completely frozen in place, feels a strange mix of excitement and anxiety wash over him. The following day, Kanagi's mother waves goodbye to him at the gate as a car waits. She asks him to double-check if he's forgotten to pack anything. But Kanagi tells her that he has everything and that she worries too much. She can't believe that the small child she once held in her arms is now leaving for Midori's personal headquarters. However, Midori had already promised Kanagi's mother that he would personally look after him and forge him into a truly great hunter. Hearing this, Kanagi feels a fresh wave of excitement, but his mother still looks a little bit concerned. Hiding her own fear, she gives Kanagi his packed lunch, telling him to eat it since he didn't have breakfast, even though he probably does not need it. Kanagi accepts it without a single complaint. Then, his mother looks directly at Midori with concern, asking if her son will have to face danger. Midori confirms this is true without a moment's pause, to which his mother confesses that Kanagi has had a hard life until now. It is a huge decision for her to entrust her son to Midori. Yet, as a loving mother, she cannot help but feel worried. Midori, with a confident, reassuring voice, swears to her that he will train Kanagi to the point where he will not have a single weakness left. Hearing this, she finally agrees to place Kanagi in his care. As they get settled in the car, Rin, who is driving, looks over at Midori and asks if it was truly all right to make a vow like that to Kanagi's mother, considering even they have no idea what the future will bring. Midori, looking slightly concerned, glances back through the car's rearview mirror and sees Kanagi's mother giving him some last-minute advice, telling him how to properly wash all of his clothes and reminding him not to sleep without clothes or he'll get sick. Seeing her pure, motherly love, a determined fire ignites in Midori's eyes. He makes a silent vow to himself to do his best. Meanwhile, Kanagi, trying to hold back his own emotions, says his last goodbyes just as he is about to get in the car. His mother reminds him to please come home for the new year. As they finally begin to leave, Midori asks if Kanagi is doing all right. Kanagi confesses that he had to suppress his emotions pretty hard. Midori casually leans back in his seat, telling him to just do whatever he feels like, whether he wants to eat or just get some rest. Looking to his side, Kanagi sees the lunchbox his mother packed, sitting there, neatly wrapped up beside him. He opens up the container, his mother's, parting words still echoing in his ears. As he removes the lid, his eyes fall on a small good luck message, written carefully on top of the pork cutlet. This one, simple gesture hits him incredibly hard, stirring up feelings he was not prepared for. He sits there for a long moment, thinking about all the love and the sacrifices she had made for him. A silent wave of gratitude fills his chest as he begins to eat, though his meal is seasoned with the salt of his own unshed tears. Rin and Midori, who are sitting nearby, share a quiet look, but say nothing, letting him have this private moment all to himself. As the car drives on, upon reaching their final destination, Kanagi is utterly stunned as he sees the massive anti-prophecy headquarters building. Midori formally welcomes him, saying that only a very small handful of awakeners are ever allowed inside. The immense weight of that statement hangs in the air, and for just a fleeting second, he is completely paralyzed by the realization of what he is now about to become a member of. Inside one of the many rooms, a man is standing by the window, watching their arrival with a silent, focused intensity. Without even turning around, he speaks to another person in the room, stating that the new members have finally arrived. A young girl, her face completely unreadable, questions if this is truly about the new recruit. A young man then replies, saying how incredibly rare it is for them to get a new teammate. However, another man, standing off to the side with his arms folded, voices his own doubts, insisting they should first see if this newcomer is actually worthy of joining the anti-prophecy. Meanwhile, back outside the massive headquarters, he is still frozen for just a moment, trying to fully take in his new surroundings. So many questions swirl in his mind. Like, what exactly is the anti-prophecy unit, and if it has any relation to the Ichihara Guild? Sensing his confusion, Rin speaks up, acknowledging the lack of info, and apologizes for not being able to tell him sooner. She says that she could not explain anything to his mother due to the mission's classified status, stressing that it is a matter of top national security. Those words land heavier than he ever expected. As they begin to walk toward the building, Midori suggests they take his bags to his dorm room first. Rin offers to carry them, but he politely declines, saying that he can handle it all on his own. Just as he is about to take a single step forward, a sudden, sharp voice cuts through the quiet air, commanding them to wait. The sudden shout completely startles him, and as he glances up, he sees the young man from before, looking down at them. Without a moment's hesitation, the man declares that he will be the one to explain things. In the very same breath, he soars through the air, unleashing a mighty kick aimed right at it. Reacting on pure instinct, he throws up his arms to block the blow, but the sheer power of the attack shatters the pavement beneath him. The raw force of the impact rattles his entire body, yet he remains on his feet, holding his ground against the shockwave. The man, who seems to be impressed, acknowledges his incredible toughness and offers a single word of praise. Intrigued, he pauses for just a brief second before asking who he is. Without missing a single beat, the man leaps back, landing perfectly on the solid ground, before proudly announcing himself as Hanada Hikataro, a member of the anti-prophecy unit and his new comrade. The statement catches him completely by surprise. However, there's no more time for him to think. Hanada has been tasked with explaining the situation, and whether Kanagi is prepared or not, the absolute truth is about to be revealed. Meanwhile, Midori remains calm as he asks Rin for a cup of tea. Rin nods and pours him a fresh cup, while the other two continue to go at it. Midori watches them with a relaxed expression, his gaze unwavering as he asks Hanada why they are fighting. Despite now being comrades, Hanada, completely unfazed, says that this serves two different purposes: to introduce the anti-prophecy unit and to test Kanagi's skills. The strange explanation hangs in Kanagi's mind, leaving him unsure of what kind of test this is supposed to be. Without any warning, Hanada moves with blinding, pinpoint precision, unleashing another powerful kick at him. Kanagi reacts in a flash, blocking the hit with both of his arms. With his completely rock-solid stance, Hanada, still in the heat of their battle, begins to explain the true origins of the anti-prophecy unit. Kanagi listens, but he is still highly skeptical, doubting that Hanada really plans to give him a full debriefing while they're still in the middle of a serious fight. As their brutal exchange continues, Hanada stops for a brief second to ask for Kanagi's full name, before continuing his assault without any hesitation. He introduces himself clearly as Kanagi Minato. Midori, who is still casually sipping his own tea, thinks about how Kanagi has been tested over and over, first by his own academy, then by him, and even by an S rank. And now he faces yet another harsh trial. Turning his head to Rin, Midori wonders out loud if Kanagi will always be forced to endure these endless tests. Rin, with a completely calm expression, says that it really can't be helped. After all, Kanagi is a special talent that Midori had personally recruited. Hanada's lightning-fast kicks continue to rain down, yet Kanagi continues to block them with his arms, his stamina showing no signs of stopping. At one point, Hanada throws out a single question: what is the true purpose of a hunter? Kanagi answers him without a moment's pause, stating that a hunter's one duty is to slay the monsters that pour out from the dimensional cracks. Hanada gives him an approving thumbs up, confirming that his answer is absolutely correct. He continues, comparing their job to simple pest control, a very direct, yet very heavy analogy. Then, without any warning, Hanada drops to the ground, changing the subject with a brand new question. He asks Kanagi about the other threats that exist beyond the dimensional cracks. The question takes Kanagi completely by surprise. He pauses before asking Hanada to explain what he means by other dangers. Hanada's own expression darkens for a moment as he explains that this world is facing dangers far greater than the ones caused by the dimensional rifts. He speaks of truly terrifying events: the pandemonium, the 10,000 demon castle from 10 years ago, and the great outbreak of Kyushu from just 5 years ago. Kanagi instantly knows these as the massive-scale dimensional breaks, disasters that have left permanent, deep scars. Before he can even think of a reply, Hanada suddenly lunges straight at him, His instincts scream, and Kannagi throws his arms up to defend, managing to just barely block the attack. Even so, the raw power of the hit sends him sliding backward. Hanada praises his impressive resilience, complimenting him for correctly remembering the public knowledge of those ancient, terrible disasters. He then says that Kannagi will learn much more about them once he starts his training at the new academy. Just as Kannagi finally steadies himself, his breathing still perfectly controlled, he has almost no time to react. There is no time to think. Hanada's leg is already coming down in a devastating axe kick. Kannagi throws himself out of the path just in the nick of time, barely dodging as Hanada's foot craters the solid ground. A nearby tree takes the full force of the blow instead and splits perfectly down the middle. The sheer, destructive power leaves Kannagi completely stunned. Hanada straightens up, his tone changing as he continues to explain. The calamities he just mentioned, like the Tower of Malevolence from 300 years ago, are not just disasters. They're full-on invasions, direct assaults from an entirely different dimension. Kannagi tries to process the sheer weight of those words, struggling to accept what he is now hearing. This isn't just ancient history. This is still happening now. Hanada takes a step closer, his face now completely serious. He admits he doesn't know why modern-day awakeners are so weak. Compared to the warriors from the era of the Tower, there are very few individuals who can match the might of the original founders, a fact that clearly disturbs him. Kannagi, caught somewhere between confusion and deep concern, finally asks the question that has been burning inside him. What are we supposed to do? Hanada's answer is absolute. This is the very reason the anti-prophecy unit was created. Those who possess the power to see these future threats and predict the coming of these world-ending disasters do not share this knowledge with the general public. They only tell the true elites, the very ones who are able to handle such dangers. And those elites, Hanada proclaims, are none other than the members of the anti-prophecy unit. Midori and Rin can't help but smile with pride at this statement. Kannagi finally understands their true purpose, to stop these terrible prophecies from ever happening. Hanada then tells him that as of today, he is now an official member of their ranks. He is the first person to ever block all of his kicks in a row, so he welcomes him to the team. Hanada offers his hand, signaling his official acceptance, and Kannagi shakes it. Midori and Rin both applaud, and Hanada calls out to the other awakeners, who appear above them, in silence. Hanada asks them what they are going to do, but they just stare down at him and then disappear, which completely takes Kannagi by surprise. Midori notes that they vanished as if they were villains, but Hanada just shakes his head, saying that they want to see it all for themselves. Hanada turns to Midori, asking him to leave the rest to him, and Midori agrees to do just that. Heading off, Hanada then helps Kannagi with all his things, offering to guide him to his room in the main dormitory, for which Kannagi thanks him. That night, as he gets settled into his new room, Kannagi can't help but think about the importance of the organization that he has now just joined. An entire organization dedicated to stopping prophecies in their world. He wonders if the founders ever dealt with the same kind of threat during their time with the Tower, and if he is now fighting a battle against fate itself. His mind fills with a deep anxiety, but then a sudden voice cuts through his dark thoughts, suggesting that he should just start training. Startled, he turns around to see Hinoki and the other founders all standing right there before him. He quickly says he is sorry for not talking with him sooner, but Hinoki tells him that they have all reached a decision. As the founders, they have all decided to train him to become the strongest awakener, just like Midori. With their divine guidance, he could become the most powerful awakener in all of history, one of their very own disciples. Kannagi, completely stunned, asks if they really want him to be their disciple. Hinoki nods his head and replies yes, fearfully adding that it seems like a fine idea. She bursts outside, finding the others poised on a cliff's edge, gazing down at a radiant, pulsating light below. What she witnesses leaves her in absolute disbelief. A colossal arcane sigil dominates the entire landscape, its sheer magnitude far beyond their wildest fears. Hanada immediately comprehends the direness of their situation. This is infinitely worse than they imagined. The prophecy is on the verge of completion. Rising up from the very ground, Ghastly skeletal forms are imprisoned within giant crystals. Their unholy radiance casts a deathly pall over the entire scene. The horrifying sight sends a shiver down their spines, as they fear they may have arrived far too late. These skeletons are the 23 villagers from the report. Swole recounts a hauntingly similar case from his past. 30 years ago, the Wakama mansion was erased from existence, and a dimensional gateway almost tore open. As he speaks, the massive spire in the sigil's center begins to pulse with volatile bursts of power. Seeing this, Suwa commands them to advance immediately. Hanada, brandishing his weapon, asks for their next course of action, to which Suwa declares they have no choice but to stop. Akane immediately reminds him of the director's command. They were strictly ordered to await further commands. However, before any debate can begin, they feel a suffocating aura surge up behind them. As they whirl around, they see Kannagi wreathed in immense power, his entire being primed for war. The team instantly senses that Kannagi is far mightier than before. Despite this, Suo remains completely unfazed. With a sharp grin, he leaps down, ordering the rest to follow. They all charge and ride after him, though Akane warns him not to do anything foolish. As they descend upon the malevolent magic circle, Hinoki and the mage instantly detect a stench on the wind, an odor that feels terribly familiar. They had smelled this very scent countless times in their past. Just then, the very earth begins to quake violently, and in a single, explosive blast, a colossal hand erupts from the ground below. Hinoki's eyes widen with utter horror. He now knows precisely what that dreadful scent is. It is the unmistakable reek of a forbidden art. This is the dark prophecy from the Book of Scorching Heat. According to Hinoki, an ancient awakener named Bandu Shurjima, the feared leader of the Dark Magus, committed mass genocide during the ancient EPSI era. He was finally defeated by the great Onmyoges. But in that battle, an entire village was sacrificed. Shigemaru harvested the blood of all the dead villagers and used it to create a powerful magic circle, ensuring his own rebirth 1,000 years later. His goal, to devour all of humanity and rule as a demon king. Before his death, he left behind a forbidden technique that detailed how living souls would be offered up for his dark resurrection. Now, in this era, Shigemaru has been reborn as a boss of unknown power, and his one mission is clear: to enact the prophecy of scorching heat. Looking down at his own hands, he sneers, realizing he was reborn with far less might than he had anticipated. He wonders if there were not enough sacrifices for his ritual. As he scans his new surroundings, he notes with a sick amusement that even after a millennium, this pathetic place has not changed at all. However, his lips twist into a horrifying grin when he sees the anti-prophecy unit now approaching. He thinks that it is just more sacrifices for him to devour. Summoning his accursed arts, he unleashes Plate of Een, causing a massive detonation beneath the charging anti-prophecy unit. Kannagi watches with horror as the blast swallows Hinata and Akane. But as the smoke begins to clear, they emerge completely untouched. However, Kannagi's own expression turns grim when he spots a dark, malevolent sigil materializing right where they are about to land. It is the dark art, Death Realm. From the cursed circle, hundreds of specters rise, their ghostly hands reaching out to trap Haneda and Akane. They struggle against the grasping, spectral hands, and quickly, they realize that Shigemaru is far more powerful than they ever imagined. As Shigemaru watches his curse take hold, he suddenly detects a movement right behind him. It is Kannagi launching a surprise attack. With a horrifying, fluid grace, Shigemaru evades, bending and weaving with impossible speed. He smirks, mocking Kannagi and calling him a complete novice, before casting Plate of Een directly under his feet. The blast detonates, but to Shigemaru's shock, Kannagi emerges completely unharmed. He counters at Shurjima with his Thunderbolt, Hadad's skill, but it is parried as Shurjima summons his own dark power. Despite blocking the powerful attack, Shurjima is impressed with Kannagi's choice of magic. From within the thick smoke, Su walks up right behind Shurjima and uses the chrysanthemum spell, sending a wave of sharp blades flying straight toward him. Shigemura is surprised, but he easily dodges it by leaping into the air. While he is suspended in the air, Suo casts another spell, revealing that he had already known. Shigemura would not fall to such a low-level technique. Slamming his weapon down, Suo unleashes the autumn skill, causing a rain of daggers to fall from the sky. However, Shigemura simply lets out a grin, calling it a pathetic shower of mere lights. He then morphs his own hand into a sword and strikes, who parries it with a massive, heavy blow. After being blocked, Shigemura understands that Suo is likely the powerhouse of the group. Kanagi, standing off to the side, finds Shigemura's power to be completely unfathomable, as he is so different from the enemies they've fought before. Shigemura feels even stronger than the founders. As Kanagi is thinking about this, he hears his comrades yelling for him from behind. Turning around, he is shocked to see both Akane and Haneda being blasted by the black art skills. After managing to escape the attack, both Akane and Haneda start charging straight towards Shurajima, who is still locked in battle with Saw. While he is fighting them, Shurajima summons 3 skeletal demons to handle Akane and Haneda, who are still charging straight toward him. Haneda, seeing a demon materialize in front of him, unleashes a powerful kick, but to his shock, it is nothing at all. The monsters' bodies are as tough as the minotaur they faced before. One of the skeletal demons appears before Kanagi, blocking his path. Meanwhile, Suo and Shurajima continue their furious exchange of attacks. Shurajima taunts Suo, saying he won't get any help from his comrades. However, as soon as he says this, Suo slices directly at Shigemasa's shoulder, declaring that he doesn't require any help. He then points his blade at Shigemura, warning him to back off, stating that the only thing he can trust is his own power. Wiping the blood from his new wound, Shigemura begins to laugh like a complete madman, proclaiming that he, too, needs no one and that he will devour everyone. With that, he charges straight at Suo, who just barely manages to block the attack, inches from his body. As Suo struggles to fend off Shijima's assault, he hears someone call out his name from behind. It's Kanagi, who is charging straight towards Shigemura. Shigemura is surprised to see him, as he had sent a demon specifically to stop him. However, when he glances back, he sees the others are still fighting their own demons, while the one he sent for Kanagi is lying, cut in two. As Shurajima is processing this, he is struck by a devastating punch to the jaw from Kanagi, sending him skidding across the hard ground. Suo is also completely stunned by the attack, and Kanagi suggests that they fight as one to defeat Shurajima. Suo is briefly shocked, as Kanagi and Akane haven't even defeated their own foes yet. This guy has, and now he is offering his help to him. However, Suo's own pride gets the best of him, and he immediately rejects Kanagi's generous offer, proclaiming that he doesn't need anyone's assistance, that he is more than powerful enough to fight alone. Kanagi is stunned, but before they can argue any further, Shurajima suddenly closes the distance between them, unleashing his Megatsu's breath technique. A massive energy beam blasts straight towards them both. Suo is able to block it, but Kanagi is sent flying, his entire body struck by the powerful, destructive attack. He slams into a nearby tree, and his vision begins to blur as his consciousness slips. As he is drifting into the darkness, he sees Hinoki and the mage's spirit standing right before him. Hinoki tells him that he has passed out, and so they have brought him into his own consciousness. Despite the immense pain from his bruised and broken body, Kanagi forces himself to get up, desperately begging them to please send him back. He has to fight. However, before they can even give an answer, a deep, commanding voice echoes throughout the spiritual plane, ordering him to stand down from this current battle. Meanwhile, back outside, Suo is barely able to hold his own against Shijima's unending barrage of brutal attacks. Shurajima grins, praising Suo for thinking the same way he does, needing no one else to fight his own battles. With a wicked smile and the unquenchable desire to devour all, Shurajima pours all his power into his next attack, striking down with such immense force that Suo's sword shatters in two. Stunned but still quick on his feet, Suo immediately summons another blade and swings it at Shurajima, but the demon evades, effortlessly bending backwards with an unnatural flexibility. Shurajima seems to be enjoying this fight more and more, as Suo continues to lose this battle. Back in the spirit world, Kanagi's spirit form watches as the battle continues. Shurajima is more powerful than anyone else there. Hinoki says that this is far beyond what Kanagi can handle. The mage adds that Shigemura's precision is incredibly high. If there had been more human sacrifices at this location, he might have already become a true demon king. She warns Kanagi that if Shigemura devours his life as well, he will grow even stronger and unleash hell on civilization. She calls their discovery of this grimoire nothing more than a simple, unfortunate coincidence. Hinoki then moves forward, requesting that Kanagi lend them his entire body so that they can settle this matter on their own. However, to their complete and utter shock, Kanagi flatly denies them, apologizing. He says that this is no longer just training. This is real. He has to defeat this enemy on his own, just as he will have to in the future. With a fiery confidence and a steely resolve, he looks at them and asks if they agree with his decision. The mage starts to protest, but is cut off by Hinoki, who lets out a loud laugh. He tells Kanagi that he has already won them over, placing a single hand on Kanagi's own shoulder. Hinoki reminds him of his vow to surpass the founders. With that, he tells Kanagi to go and use all that he's learned and to do things his own way. This ignites Kanagi's spirit, and with a determined gaze, he looks to the battlefield, asking the founders to watch over him. Without another word, he dashes straight towards the fight, where Shurajima and Suwa are still locked in a fierce battle. Suwa looks completely beaten and battered. As he opens his eyes, Shurajima strikes him once again, sending him flying high into the air. While airborne, Shurajima prepares his final, deadly blow to finish him. But just as Suwa braces himself for the end, someone grabs him in midair. His sword and body are caught by Kanagi in the air. Our boy borrows Suwa's blade, and with a single motion, he throws him safely towards the ground, away from the incoming energy beam from Shurajima. Suwa lands safely on the ground, and Shurajima turns his full attention back to the airborne Kanagi. He unleashes another Magatsu's breath, aimed right for him, but is horrified to see Kanagi coolly using Hinoki's one-hand sword technique. With an intense focus, Kanagi slices right through Shijima's breath attack, cutting the blast perfectly in half. And with masterful control, he strikes Shijima's own arm, severing it completely from his body. Shurajima, completely stunned and horrified, is left completely speechless, unsure of what just happened. Shaking with pure rage, he screams about his true identity. But Kanagi, his face a mask of unbreakable determination, responds coldly that he is the one who will eclipse the founders. The mage, who is observing the battle, asks Hinoki if Kanagi can actually win against the Dark Magus. But even Hinoki himself does not yet know. However, he is sure that Kanagi is not acting foolishly. He thinks that Kanagi must have learned something new while he had been asleep inside the car. On their way here, a wide smile spreads across Hinoki's face as he wonders if it is something even beyond his own comprehension. Su, watching Kanagi move with such impossible grace and power, is also completely shocked. Just a few moments ago, he had refused Kanagi's help, and yet, now it is that very same help that has saved his life. Meanwhile, Kanagi unleashes a flurry of slashes at Shurajima, forcing the demon to teleport far away. Encounter with his dark art skill, Pomegranate. A hailstorm of energy blasts shoots straight towards Kanagi. He tries to dodge them, but sees that they are homing in on him, jumping all around in an attempt to escape. Kanagi finds the energy blasts relentlessly pursuing him. Suddenly, he remembers one of the founder's skills, Aftershock, slamming his own foot into the ground. He raises a massive stone wall in front of him, blocking all of the incoming attacks. Shigemura is shocked by Kanagi's quick thinking, but quickly launches even more blasts his way. In response, Kanagi uses the broken stone shards to shield his body. Once again, taking this golden opportunity, Kanagi combines two skills to flash right behind Shigemura, but Shigemura just barely manages to dodge in the nick of time. Countering in an instant, he unleashes his plate of Een blast, striking Kanagi. Though Kanagi takes the full hit, he absorbs the majority of the blast's impact. Using a floating rock as a launch pad, he lunges straight at Shigemura, remembering all the lessons taught to him by the founders. Shigemura evades him one more time, but the sheer number of techniques Kanagi is using leaves him stunned. The founders, who are watching from a distance, are also completely shocked by Kanagi's growth and furious assault. However, Shurajima is still not finished yet. With a dark, malevolent glare, he unleashes his forbidden art, summoning a towering skeletal beast through skeleton fusion. This colossal monstrosity looms over everyone, radiating a powerful, terrifying aura. Shurajima smirks, declaring that this will finally be the end. The giant skeleton swings its massive palm straight for Kanagi, as the founders scream for him to get away. Kanagi remains completely motionless, staring at the incoming final attack. Deep in his own mind, he knows that even if he gives his all, he still does not have the power to defeat Shurajima. He understands that he needs something more, something far beyond his current abilities. Remembering the lessons from the mage and from Hinoki, Kanagi remembers how to conjure a shining flame and Hinoki's one-handed sword technique. He remembers Hinoki teaching him the wave blade attack and all of his different slashes. Drawing upon both these lessons, Kanagi summons a shining flame into his hand, while infusing his sword with Hinoki's own power, transforming his own weapon into a brilliant, blazing blade. The mage and Hinoki watch, completely stunned. Kanagi has just done the completely impossible. Holding his new, super-powered weapon, Kanagi stands at the ready. The technique he has just created is called Blazing Fire Cutting Blade. Without a moment's hesitation, he charges straight at the skeletal beast, swinging his fiery blade as Shigemura watches in disbelief. Remembering Hinoki's lessons about the blade and the mage's magic, Kanagi wanted to master more than just those two. With that single-minded determination, he was able to use the blazing fire cutting blade skill, covering his entire sword in pure flames. With one powerful swing, he slices through the skeleton, splitting it from head to toe, while also cutting Shurajima in half. Everyone is completely shocked by this amazing feat, combining two completely different magic skills in this way. The alchemist founder is particularly stunned, calling Kanagi a true irregular for his incredible ability to swap and merge all kinds of skills. He had never expected Kanagi to be able to combine techniques so flawlessly, and he thinks there may be even more to his hidden potential. Suddenly, the alchemist's spirit vanishes, leaving Hinoki completely and utterly confused. The mage, overhearing his words, agrees with him, realizing that they may have misjudged Kanagi's true abilities. She now feels a slight tinge of fear, wondering if it is really a good idea to raise someone like him. However, Hinoki is completely overjoyed by Kanagi's power and is eager to see just how much further he can grow. As Kanagi lands on the ground, completely exhausted, he is horrified to see Shigemura, who had been sliced in two, starting to regenerate from his own blood. Furious, Shigemura roars that if the attack had struck his head, he might have actually died. Channeling a dark energy, he creates a death ball, vowing to end this all himself. But just as he speaks, Suo suddenly slices his throat from behind. Shurajima is decapitated, caught completely and utterly by surprise. As his body falls, Suo catches Kanagi, who has now fallen completely unconscious. Holding him, Suo thinks about a far-off memory. His own older brother had once held him in the very same way. It was a bitter, cold night underneath a bridge, with a fresh blanket of snow on the ground. His brother had vowed to find some food for him in the morning. As Suo was drifting off in his sleep, they had heard the distant sounds of a festival above the bridge. Other people celebrating while they were shivering in the cold, their own stomachs completely empty. This memory reminds Suo why he chose to be alone. Shurajima had tried to exploit him by preying on his own loneliness. But now, as he looks down at Kanagi, he understands something. He is not actually alone, and even if he was, he knows that he can survive it. As he is thinking this, the entire barrier around them starts to shatter. Akane and Hanada rush over to them immediately, worried when they see that Kanagi is unconscious. Once they are sure that he is only passed out, Hanada sees that the barrier is collapsing from the inside. She warns them that they have to move very quickly. Hanada asks, what would happen if the energy inside the barrier explodes? Suo grips the hilt of his sword tightly, revealing that if that were to happen, they would all be instantly crushed to death. Their one and only option is to hit it with their strongest attacks and try to deflect it. Though Suo says this with confidence, deep down, he is not sure if they're strong enough in their current state, but they have no other choice. As they brace themselves, Kanagi, who is still completely unconscious, suddenly lifts his sword, pouring his energy into it. Suwa notices this with complete shock. Inside Kanagi's mind, Hinoki has taken control and is guiding his body. As the barrier finally shatters, everyone unleashes their full might. While Hinoki uses his one-handed style, splitting cloud attack, outside the collapsing barrier, a red-haired man is rushing towards the scene with two other men. His subordinates warn him that the barrier is about to implode. Suddenly, it bursts completely open. The men fear that they might be too late, but to their complete and utter shock, a brilliant pillar of blue energy shoots into the sky from Kanagi's sword. The red-haired man watches with pure awe, recognizing the blue light as a perfect, flawless sword art, completely free of hesitation. His name is Sumakoto, the legendary captain of the anti-prophecy unit. Observing the spectacular sight before him, he wonders whose incredible work this could be. A short while later, on a plane flying high over Peru, Midori is on a call with Makoto, amazed that the new recruit has just stopped the unknown prophecy. Meanwhile, back in Japan, Makoto, who is still on the call, is now facing a rank 1 prophecy, one that, according to him, is on a much higher level than the one they had faced before. Midori, instead of sitting inside the plane, is sitting right on top of it, smiling as he thinks about how much the anti-prophecy unit has grown, even though he is not there to see it with his own eyes. However, his happy mood is short-lived when Makoto tells him that the core member who stopped the prophecy was none other than Kanagi, the very same Kanagi who had only joined their team 2 days ago. Shocked, Makoto desperately asks to know who he really is. Without a single moment of doubt, Midori confidently proclaims that Kanagi is the one who will put an end to all of the prophecies. They had been waiting for his fated arrival for a very long time. There was always a sense of great expectation around him, as if he were the prophesized one they had all been waiting for. Makoto, who is very skeptical of such a grand claim, questions if their faith in him is truly a wise choice. Instead of arguing, he is simply told to see it for himself. Changing the subject, Makoto begs Midori to please come back. His great power is needed, as battling a foe of equal strength without him is proving to be an impossible challenge. Midori chuckles, offering a quick apology before changing the subject. Meanwhile, Rin calls out to him, his voice filled with a sudden urgency, as he speaks of a grand prophecy appearing right before them. It is a colossal, titanic enemy, a super-rank prophecy. The boss of suicidal infection is Tom. As the massive creature charges straight towards him, Midori tells Makoto to please hold on, promising him that he will finish this up quickly, without a single moment of hesitation. He holds out his hand and unleashes divine wind turbulence. At that exact same moment, in a nearby hospital room, Kanagi's eyes suddenly snap wide open. A panicked cry escapes his lips as he shoots up in his bed. A nearby nurse, seeing his sudden movement, leans over his bed to try and reassure him. She tells him that he has finally woken up. He has been in the anti-prophecy medical ward, asleep since the end of his last mission. Hearing this, Kanagi wonders if he had just lost consciousness. His sleep had been so incredibly deep that he didn't even go to the spatial realm to train with his founder spirits. The nurse tells him that he is completely fine, drawing back the privacy curtain before telling him to call if he should need anything. As the curtain is pulled back, Kanagi sees Suwa sitting right there, arms folded, silently and intently watching him. Seeing him, Kanagi wonders if he had been watching him the entire time. He had been completely unconscious. Kanagi looks around and sees that Hanada and Akane are gone. Curious, he asks where they have gone, to which Suwa reveals that they are both out training, frustrated by how useless they felt in their last battle. With a calm and accepting tone, Suwa coolly says that Kanagi's own power was overwhelming. Hearing such a compliment from a man like Suwa shocks the overpowered boy, but before he can even think about it, Suwa suddenly stands and aggressively asks to know who he truly is. In less than 2 days after his arrival, Kanagi has already taken down a rank 3 and a potential rank 1 boss, while using a unique fusion spell that Suwa has never seen before. Pressing his question once again, Suwa demands to know Kanagi's true identity and how he, too, can become just like him. As Suwa is demanding to get some answers, Makoto suddenly appears, asking if Kanagi is the one he's looking for. Kanagi confirms this, But Suwa is completely stunned by his older brother's sudden arrival. Makoto walks right past Saw, barely even looking at him, while Kanagi hesitantly asks if he really is Suwa's older brother. The very moment the question leaves his mouth, Makoto suddenly draws his own sword and swings it, inches away from every single person in the room. Both Suwa and Kanagi are completely caught off guard, dodging the powerful attack. Kanagi wonders if this is some new test, while Makoto, who is equally stunned, marvels at how a simple trainee was able to dodge his surprise attack. Makoto confirms that this was indeed a test, and that Kanagi has passed it without a single hesitation. He introduces himself as the captain of Suwa's personal squad, Suwa Makoto. The realization hits Kanagi like a ton of bricks. Makoto really is Suwa's older brother. After a short, tense pause, Makoto announces that, due to Kanagi's unprecedented performance against the Rank 1 disaster, he will be joining his own squad on a temporary basis. The news leaves Kanagi completely stunned, but Suwa is even more completely shocked. A bitter tinge of jealousy starts to creep into his heart, despite being Makoto's own younger brother. Even he is not permitted to join his elite squad. Wasting no more time, Makoto tells Kanagi to follow him for a debriefing, while in the background, Suwa clenches his own fist so tightly in his frustration that his own knuckles begin to bleed. Meanwhile, in a massive training area, the anti-prophecy unit duo are training extremely hard. Akane is wielding multiple different weapons, while Hinata is focusing on blocking all of her attacks. However, no matter how hard they are pushing themselves, they know that getting to Kanagi's own level is nearly impossible. Upon his defeated unit, at that very instant, in the rear, Kanagi beseeches his ancient founders for their aid. His hair bleaches to a stark white as Hinoki seizes command. The remaining squad members, still in full retreat, find their path abruptly blocked by the monstrous boss, who stands defiant, her severed limbs already regenerated. Kashi, watching this horror unfold, grows grim, knowing she cannot possibly defeat this beast alone. She shouts for Kanagi, who remains motionless in the distance. To her, it appears as if his warrior's resolve has utterly shattered after watching his newfound comrades get brutally slaughtered. Such a reaction was understandable. He was, after all, a newcomer who had just joined their ranks. But then, to her complete astonishment, Kanagi surges to his feet from the snow in a blinding streak of light. He rockets forward, delivering a bone-shattering kick to the boss, launching it clear across the entire battlefield. On the other side, Makoto and his foe continue their lethal dance, exchanging blow for devastating blow. Makoto, gripping but a fragment of his sword, unleashes a torrent of scarlet light. The apostle narrowly dodges, twisting his body aside, though he avoids the direct impact. A deep unease begins to fester. It's getting harder. Makoto's flames, which should have been nullified by his darkness, are reigniting and lashing out at him once more. And what's more, there is a finite limit to how much he can manipulate his darkness, and that breaking point is fast approaching. Realizing this, he launches a volley of dark orbs toward Makoto, but Makoto evades with impossible speed, using the opening to surge forward and sever his opponent's arm in a single, clean strike. Now, the tables have completely turned. However, despite losing a limb, the apostle lunges ahead and slams his knee into Makoto's grievous wound. The captain collapses to the snow, writhing in agony, as the apostle menacingly closes in. He looks down and sneers that a lost arm is utterly meaningless. After all, there is still a gaping hole in Makoto's stomach. He then reveals a truly chilling fact. He had already predicted Makoto's entire combat plan from the very first exchange of blows. He knew Makoto would force a close-quarters battle. He concedes Makoto's immense power, admitting that he always makes the most optimal choices and never squanders a single second. But he also exposes Makoto's one critical weakness. He is far too predictable, and that, he declares, is precisely the reason Makoto is doomed to lose. Reaching into his pack, he withdraws a small book. Holding it aloft, he proclaims that Makoto's defeat has long been foretold within its cursed pages. Makoto's eyes widen in horror as he recognizes the Book of Doom. The apostle cracks open the ancient tome, unveiling a shocking, world-altering truth. The zealot then states that If a faction exists with the sole purpose of stopping prophecies, then it is only logical that one exists to ensure their fulfillment. Makoto is floored, having never known of such a dark organization. The apostle then delivers his final grand reveal, that he is counted among the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. He announces himself as the 12th of darkness, the one fated to bring this very prophecy to fruition. Makoto, still reeling from the revelation, demands to know the reason for his fanatical drive to bring forth annihilation. The apostle, idly flipping pages, smirks and asks, "If I told you, would you find it in your heart to forgive me?" Makoto is utterly enraged by this cruel mockery. Without a moment's hesitation, he swings his sword with all his fury, nearly cleaving the apostle's shoulder from his body. Makoto feels a surge of confidence that he can still win this fight, as his opponent seems to be depleted of all mana, and his physical form appears to be at its absolute limit. Makoto ignites his red dragon transformation, certain this final push will grant him victory. On the other side of the clash, the apostle, his shoulder nearly torn off, is somehow still standing, proclaiming that this is the moment of Makoto's end. With those words, he produces a vial and drinks its contents. It unleashes a blinding, explosive burst of light. The light sears Makoto's vision, and from within that incandescence, a powerful fist slams into Makoto's jaw, sending him smashing back into the frozen earth. As the brilliant light fades, Makoto is in utter disbelief, seeing that every wound he had inflicted on the apostle has vanished. His opponent now stands at his absolute peak strength. The apostle declares that the potion he just consumed is an artifact, one that allowed him to heal his body completely. With only one arm, Makoto unleashes his scarlet light blade once more, blasting a sword wave directly at his enemy. But the apostle negates it with his shadow orbs, and counters with a relentless flurry of attacks. Makoto is left reeling, as the artifact the apostle used is supposed to be under strict government control, because of how incredibly overpowered it is, and no regular organization should ever be able to get their hands on one. The apostle kicks Makoto square in his gut wound, sending him to the ground, where he begins to draw his final ragged breaths. Believing Makoto is finally broken, the apostle exhales in relief, thinking he has at last achieved his victory. But in that moment, Makoto, remembering his youth and his fallen comrades, still tries to grasp for his broken sword. He also recalls Kanagi's advice about treating his brother like his cat, which brings a faint smile to his blood-stained lips. With a final surge of determination, he raises his blade, but as he prepares to make his final stand, a beam of pure darkness strikes him, completely severing the hand that was gripping his sword. The apostle, with an air of absolute finality, bids Makoto a final, cold farewell. But just as he readies himself to deliver the killing blow, a figure appears, shattering the crystal spire behind it. It is Kanagi, now backed by the full might of the founders, prepared to exact their vengeance on the man who made their disciple weak. Makoto senses Kanagi's arrival and is at first deeply concerned, but he quickly understands that this is not just Kanagi. A completely different power is radiating from it. The apostle also senses this profound change, and the immense aura now pouring out of Kanagi. The boy who stood before him is no longer a helpless victim, but an entity that will ferociously defend itself. Growing deeply unnerved, the apostle warns Kanagi not to move, threatening to execute Makoto if he takes another step. But as he speaks these words, his arm is torn from his body in less than a heartbeat. The apostle is stunned, unable to even register how it happened so fast. Meanwhile, Kanagi simply swings his sword from across the battlefield, the sheer force of the blow even dulling the blade. The founders take note of this, surprised that a single strike could damage the sword so badly. The alchemist founder immediately intervenes, transmuting an entire arsenal of weapons for Kanagi to wield, with nothing but pure retribution in his eyes. Kanagi orders every last founder to unleash their fury upon this man. In that moment, the apostle completely regenerates his lost arm, which utterly shocks Inoki. The mage founder identifies it as reversal, a technique she never thought a modern-day awakener could master. She theorizes that the artifact he consumed is constantly healing his body until its magical properties are exhausted. As she finishes her thought, Kanagi looses an arrow that strikes the apostle square in the head. The man never even saw it coming, but he regenerates the lethal wound in an instant. Seeing this, One of the founders asks the mage how they are supposed to kill him. She reveals they must kill him over and over again, until he can no longer come back from death. The apostle weaves his darkness spell as Kannagi knocks another arrow. When Kannagi lets the arrow fly, the darkness spell desperately tries to block it, but the arrow punches straight through, striking the apostle in the chest and the head. The archer founder taunts the man, asking if he truly thought he could ever stop his arrows. The apostle regenerates his wounds once more, and counters with a volley of darkness orbs. Kannagi, now channeling the founder's evasive skills, weaves through the attack and flashes toward his opponent, kicking him square in the face. He then seizes the apostle's hand and delivers a palm strike to his jaw. One of the other founders observes that the apostle cannot use his deadly beam attack if his own orbs are obscuring his line of sight, which is working directly in their favor. Dodging the assault becomes far easier. Because of this, Kannagi lands a devastating blow to the apostle's gut, sending him crashing back down to the ground. The founders begin to question how many times they must witness this man die and be reborn. Meanwhile, Kannagi approaches the fallen Makoto, who, in his broken state, asks if this is really Kannagi. Kannagi denies this, clarifying that the founders are using his body as heroic spirits. Using Valentine's healing ability, preservation, Kannagi begins to knit Makoto's severed limbs back together. As he performs the healing, Kannagi says that their time is limited and they must act with haste. Seeing Kannagi turn to leave, Makoto truly understands that it is the founders who are now in command. A short way off, the apostle forces himself back to his feet, utterly baffled that his spells are being evaded and countered so perfectly, without giving him a second to recover. Kannagi attacks again, this time with a long spear, impaling him directly through the heart. The apostle is assaulted without mercy, dying and reviving repeatedly without a single moment's rest. One of the founders asks the mage if leaving the spear inside the apostle's heart will stop his regeneration. However, the spear simply passes through his body, and he begins to regenerate yet again. As the apostle starts to reform, Kannagi delivers a crushing kick from directly above, smashing him back into the frozen ground. Kannagi begins to wonder which part of the body regenerates first if they completely obliterate him. The apostle begins to regenerate from just his hand, but by the time his whole body has returned, he is gasping for air and completely spent. He is being systematically destroyed, but he refuses to let a child defeat him. He decides to kill Makoto and make his escape. He sprints towards his target, only to find Kannagi already there, calmly guarding Makoto. With a crazed grin, Kannagi informs him that he is far too late. Hinoki then assumes control and, using his legendary sword style, completely dices the apostle's body into countless pieces. Even as his body is being disintegrated, he does not fear death, believing he is simply fulfilling his destiny. But his conviction is starting to crumble when faced with a horror as absolute as Kannagi. As the apostle regenerates once more, he tries to reaffirm his sacred mission to fulfill the prophecy, refusing to allow his fear to master him. He reaches into his pack for another powerful artifact, but before he can use it, Kannagi severs his entire arm. The artifact tumbles onto the frozen ground, erupting into a powerful golden cage that surrounds Kannagi. This is the sand cage of time. The regeneration effect on the apostle finally wears off, and he finds he cannot regenerate his severed arm. Relieved, the apostle believes he has just barely survived. The founders, seeing the cage, grow deeply concerned, wondering what their next move is, since the apostle's regeneration is almost gone. The apostle, standing safely outside the cage, claims that not even his darkness can shatter this prison, so Kannagi cannot kill him while he is trapped inside. With a nervous, shaky expression, he declares that it is time for him to depart. But before he can even finish his sentence, Hinoki roars at him to watch very closely. Suddenly, the apostle feels a powerful presence behind him and turns to see Makoto standing on his own 2 feet, still regenerating. How is Makoto this much of a Chad and this overpowered? Well, it all dates back to his childhood when he trained with the absolute best, Midori. Even Midori himself lost to Makoto in a duel, which led him to insist that Makoto seek out a greater master to continue his martial education. Following the counsel of the world's most powerful awakener, Makoto sought out new teachers to become the disciple of only those at the absolute highest level. but he surpassed every single master that he trained with, whether they specialized in swordsmanship, magic, or pure agility. Every teacher gave up on him in under a month. One of these masters recommended him to the greatest swordsman that they knew. At that time, Hinoki Ichika, the younger sister of the legendary Hinoki, became Makoto's final teacher, and he trained relentlessly under her for almost 3 years. One day, while sparring with Ichika, Makoto inquired about a specific sword technique mentioned in a book and titled Indomitable. Even Ichika could not decipher how the technique functioned, stating that it was a skill that only Hinoki, the founder himself, could possibly use. Makoto found this incredibly compelling, as he had read about it in a book. But Ichika soon realized she had no more knowledge to impart to Makoto, as he had already completely mastered Hinoki's single-handed sword style. Makoto was desperate to become even more powerful, but Ichika had no idea how he could possibly ascend any further. She compared his potential to a flower that would never bloom, saying that even with all of his training, reaching his full potential in this life would be impossible for him. She hoped that one day, a swordsman even greater than herself would appear. And now, in the present, Makoto understands that that very moment is unfolding before his very eyes. He recognizes that Kannagi is using sword skills he never even knew existed. According to his old master, a chance like this might only come once in a man's entire life, and he must not let it slip away. Thankful for this opportunity, Makoto thanks Ichika in his heart and begins to touch his severed limbs back together. Seeing this, all of the founders are completely mystified as to what he's trying to do. Kannagi is also deeply concerned for his captain, who is outside the cage with their powerful enemy. Makoto then starts to emit the very same aura as Kannagi. Meanwhile, at the training grounds of the anti-prophecy faction, Midori, who is currently training with Sual, senses a tremendous aura suddenly flare up. An explosion then rocks the entire training facility, and as the dust begins to clear, they are stunned to see a massive crater in the wall, and Midori is gone. Back on the battlefield, the Apostle is completely bewildered, seeing Makoto capable of performing such an impossible feat, despite his grievous injuries. He knows without a doubt he will be cut down. Watching this, Hinoki explains to Kannagi that warriors are like flowers. They blossom into their true power only when they reach their absolute zenith, whether that is physically, spiritually, or through the mastery of a legendary technique. For Makoto, this is the very moment of his true ascension. Hinoki, standing just behind Kannagi, advises him to burn what he is about to witness deep into his soul. Kannagi instantly understands what Hinoki means. Like a flower coming into full bloom, Makoto raises his arms as if holding a sword, and with an unbreakable sense of purpose, he successfully uses Hinoki's single-handed sword styles. Lost technique, Indomitable. The very same technique he had once read about in a book. Even though the Apostle's darkness defenses are perfectly in place, his body is cleaved in two without Makoto even holding a real sword. The Apostle begins to wonder if this is the time and place he was always fated to meet his end. As his body falls to pieces, Hinoki praises Makoto for materializing, a blade that existed only within the confines of his mind. At the same time, Makoto, though standing in a state of dazed confusion, feels that he has at last become the swordsman he always dreamed of being. He considers it a true blessing to have spent time with his family, his friends, his comrades, and his subordinates. Every single experience he has ever had has made him stronger. Even if this is his final moment, he thinks of his little brother and his cat, offering them a silent apology from his heart. As he is about to finally succumb to his wounds, he sees Kannagi walking slowly towards him, offering him a hand with a kind smile. Seeing this, Makoto understands that this death might not be his end, as he can still pass on his legacy to the next generation through Kannagi. He grabs hold of Kannagi's hand, thanks him, and collapses as the golden cage dissolves into nothing. After the Apostle's defeat, Kannagi rushes to his fallen captain, feeling a profound connection to him through the crest of nothingness. All of his other comrades now lie cold and still on the ground. But as Makoto is about to join their number, Midori comes rocketing in. He catches Makoto just as he falls. Makoto breathes his last in Midori's arms at the age of 23. Following the battle with the User of Darkness, pay F for respect down in the chat. Cradling Makoto's body, Midori is lost in his own despair, unable to accept what has just transpired. He recalls a time when he asked Makoto why he had chosen to become captain of the squad while they were in the middle of training. According to Midori, in the entire anti-prophecy unit, Makoto was the second strongest, only after him. And if he went all out, absolutely no one would be able to stand against him. Midori had asked Makoto if, with all of that incredible strength, he felt it was better to fight as a lone wolf. This question seemed to catch Makoto off guard, and he asked Midori if he thought he was not suited for teamwork. But the truth was, his team meant more to Makoto than anything else. He was unsure of how to convey this feeling to Midori. But just then, his own comrades called out to him over the group's security camera. Jakaru was absolutely thrilled because one of their teammates, Kuzushiro, had just passed the level 2 assignment he had been struggling with. Kuzushiro was also overjoyed, saying he had wanted to tell his captain the news first. Jakaru, ecstatic about the good news, suggested that they all go out for a celebratory lunch. Seeing their strong bond, Midori was completely taken aback. As Midori listened, Makoto explained that he was truly fond of his comrades, and that even if he were to fall wounded in battle, he would die happy, knowing he had his comrades fighting at his side. Returning to the grim present, Midori holds his fallen friend's body and tells him that his wish of fighting for his comrades has now been fulfilled. Even though most of his team has perished, 2 of them are still drawing breath. With tears welling in his eyes, Midori gently closes Makoto's eyelids, stating that as a commander, Makoto has fulfilled his solemn duties. It is a burden Midori knows he could never have carried, but Makoto did, and he did so with the highest honor. On the other side of the field, Kannagi is on the ground, while the spirits of the founders stand behind him. A creeping darkness begins to cloud his own consciousness, and the mage explains that this is likely due to Kannagi, shouldering all of the blame for the unit's destruction, and his own perceived powerlessness. All of the founders have also known the pain of losing their comrades, their friends, and their families. Their own hearts were shattered as they watched their allies depart, and in most cases, such as with Hinoki, they were never able to truly move on from their broken hearts. Hinoki approaches the fallen Kannagi, who is still kneeling in utter despair. He calls out to him, but with a voice devoid of all hope. Kannagi confesses that he no longer has the will to fight. His spirit feels as if it has been torn to shreds, and he is certain that, if he had only let the founders fight from the very beginning, not a single person would have died. He now understands that in his quest to become strong for others, he ended up as nothing more than a simple vessel for the founders. Hinoki, hearing Kannagi's defeated words, tries to speak, but Kannagi is too lost within his own thoughts. He can still feel the hand he shook with Makoto in his subconscious, burning as hot as a raging fire. Kannagi knows that Makoto had entrusted him to carry his legacy forward. This realization brings tears to the founders' eyes. But what Kannagi proclaims next absolutely stuns them. He declares that he now not only wants to surpass the founders, but to eclipse them with every single moment that he has left. Suddenly, a pillar of pure, bright light strikes Kannagi as he shouts his vow. From this moment forward, he will not allow anyone else to die. Bro has now leveled up his mental fortitude by 1,000. 1 month later, in Nagano Prefecture, Mount Maite, Suwa is practicing his hand-to-hand combat skills against Kannagi. He unleashes blow after furious blow towards Kannagi, who gracefully evades them all. Kannagi then counters with a penetration attack, which Suwa deflects, but the force creates a shockwave behind him. Kannagi is completely shocked that Suwa could redirect the full force of his penetration spell so perfectly. As he tries to process this, Suwa counters, but Kannagi is prepared and uses Aikido to flip Suwa over. Suwa attempts to kick while still in midair, but Kannagi blocks it and retaliates with a powerful kick of his own. Just as he is about to make contact, a loud command stops them both in their tracks. It is their master, Ichika. But how did this all come to be? Well, the complete annihilation of the squad has left a deep scar on the anti-prophecy unit. During the funeral service for the fallen, everyone was overcome with immense grief. But Suwa stood paralyzed before his brother's portrait the entire time. Later, as Kannagi was returning to his quarters, he saw Suwa emerging from Makoto's room, carrying books and a cat. Kannagi instantly recognized the cat as Ora, the very one Makoto spoke so often about. Suwa was completely stunned that Kannagi knew about his brother's cat, something even he himself had never been aware of. Before he stepped foot in his brother's room, Suwa had no idea about the adorable cat. the books, the clothing, the food, or even the innermost thoughts his brother held. He only unearthed these hidden truths. When he began to go through Makoto's personal belongings, Kannagi noticed that Suo was carrying a stack of diaries with him, which he intended to keep. These journals were left behind by Makoto, so that his brother could read them in the event of his own death. All of Makoto's daily training regimens and missions were documented within, but Suo discovered something else entirely. Every single sentence in the journals ended with Makoto worrying about Suo. He wrote about how Suo was faring, how the weather was turning cold, and even about Suo's personal triumphs and life events. Reading these entries alone in his room, Suo completely broke down, curling into a ball on the floor, as he finally understood that everything his brother had ever written was about it. Comment a tear emoji if you're crying right now, too, as Suo revealed all of this to Kannagi. Kannagi also admitted that Makoto would always talk to him about Suo and his precious cat, Oribe. Hearing this, Suo teared up and declared that from this day forward, he would become stronger, so his brother would no longer have to worry about him from the afterlife. With that shared resolve, they both went to Hinoki, Ichika, for training. At first, she was very wary of the two of them, until they explained that Suo was Makoto's younger brother, and that Makoto himself had fallen in the line of duty. This news devastated Ichika, but she maintained her composure. In perfect sync, both Suo and Kannagi begged her to train them to become even stronger. Returning to the present day, Ichika is amazed at how much the two of them have advanced, especially Suo, who has made truly remarkable progress. Kannagi then asks about his own personal growth, to which Ichika replies with an exasperated sigh, saying she has nothing left that she can teach Kannagi, since he already has complete mastery of everything. She jokes that it should be her asking him for lessons instead. She then kicks a wooden stick towards both of them, and with a wild grin, she declares, "I am the sword," issuing a challenge for them to come at her with all they have. With that, the two of them charge at her in unison, Suo attacking directly from the front, while Kannagi launches his assault from above. As they clash, Kannagi is determined to ascend in power, and he is certain that he will, one day, become the most powerful awakener in the entire world. Meanwhile, in London, England, a man in a hat and coat walks through the nighttime streets, all alone. As he rounds a dark corner, a voice identifies him as one of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse, Quatra. Quatra also recognizes the figure that is approaching him. It's Midori. Midori's demand is cold and absolute. Reveal the location of his base and his comrades. He warns him that if he says anything else, he will die. Hearing this threat, Quatra instantly materializes his own weapon, a bizarre, heart-shaped spear, and challenges Midori to come and get him. A sudden, violent spray of blood erupts from the dark alleyway, followed by Midori emerging, completely unscathed. Outside, other members of the anti-prophecy group are lying in wait. Midori hands them the book, turns, and departs, stating 7 now remain. They now possess 5 of the books, meaning they have successfully eliminated 5 of the 12 apostles of the apocalypse, and Midori is already on his way to his next target. Inside the anti-prophecy's most top-secret installation, the Hunt of Everlasting Secrets, a subordinate presents the book Midori acquired to an elderly woman. Her name is Io, the superintendent of the entire anti-prophecy unit. The man who delivered the tome confirms it is from Midori and clarifies that these are prophecy books belonging to the 12 apostles of the apocalypse. This man is Jigen, the assistant to the superintendent. Another assistant, a woman by the name of Shiki, is also in attendance. She posits that the books may be fragments of a single, larger tome that has been somehow dismembered. Io opens the book and makes the observation that slaying the apostles and recovering the books are not the primary issues. The true problem is that Midori is acting completely on his own, and it is clear that Makoto's death has left a very deep scar on him. Shiki, hearing this, inquires as to what their next move should be. Io, with a gentle smile, orders them to leave Midori entirely in her hands. She assures them that as soon as he returns, she will personally prepare a pot of tea for him, Jigen and Shiki then make the proposition that since Makoto's entire squad has been wiped out, leaving a void in the anti-prophecy unit's ranks, they are willing to create a new squad under their direct command. Hearing this proposal, Io falls into a state of deep contemplation. Meanwhile, somewhere in the vicinity of Tokyo, a rank 2 prophecy, the rebellion, is now manifest. The champion of this particular prophecy is the God of Down. Members of the anti-prophecy unit are clashing with the soldiers of the prophecy, but they're struggling to take down even a handful of them. In their growing panic, they cry out for their captain, Hibiki. Hibiki, the captain of the Hibiki Setsuna squad, now steps onto the field. Grunts are dull and effortless to defeat. She then turns her gaze back to Akane, now part of her unit, and asks if she is up to the task. Akane invokes her Trismegistus incantation, conjuring a colossal sphere of quicksilver. She commands everyone to create distance, as she unleashes the mercury across the ground toward the enemy's soldiers. When every soldier's feet are deep within the liquid metal, Akane unleashes her gasification spell, transmuting the mercury into a lethal vapor. The soldiers begin to choke, gasping for air. Akane then reverses the process, turning the gas back to liquid mercury, which is now coursing through the soldiers' veins. She uses crimson heat to boil the metal within them. And for the finale, she solidifies the mercury, ending all the soldiers' lives by forging lethal spikes inside them. The entire unit is completely floored, as Akane just eradicated every single enemy in a few heartbeats. Akane snaps her fingers, turning back to face the group, proclaiming that her work here is done. Hibiki approaches her, applauding slowly. She commends Akane for mastering all 3 states of matter, and chaining 4 attacks into a single, seamless skill. She gently holds Akane's chin, stating it is a pity. Akane is just a temporary addition to their ranks. Hibiki suggests that once Akane concludes her training, she should consider joining their squad for good. Akane, thrilled, replies that she will consider. The other squad members are also deeply impressed by Akane, wondering if she would truly join their unit, given her immense power and undeniable charm. However, to their utter surprise, Hibiki wants Akane to join her team, since she wants her future fights to be effortless. The moment Akane departs, she contacts Kanagi, informing him that she has now mastered Lesson 7 on controlling the 3 forms of alchemy, and requests that he send her the next lesson. Kanagi, while trying to protect his food from the cat, accepts. The founder alchemist, overhearing this, is amazed that Akane has finally conquered level 7. Kanagi asks the founder to create 3 additional lessons for Akane, which he enthusiastically agrees to do. Kanagi relays this news to Akane, and she thanks him. She also reports that Hanada has now reached Lesson 8. Inside the prefecture of Takarazawa City, a rank 2 prophecy, earth-eating beast with a boss sphinx has appeared. Hanada, dispatched to neutralize the threat, unleashes his lightning kick and utterly annihilates the boss in a single, devastating blow. With this, he has now completed his level 8 lesson on the lightning kick. The captain of the Todoroki squad showers Hanada with praise and offers him a permanent position on their team. Hanada, much like Akane, wishes to carefully consider which squad he will join. He asks Akane for her guidance, and she, eager for a new rival to crush, declares that regardless of which team he joins, she will achieve victory over them. Kanagi, who is listening in on a group call with them, is overjoyed that they are both becoming so powerful, and declares that he must also rise and begin his own training. As Kanagi speaks, Suwa becomes irritated that Oribe the cat is always attached to Kanagi and not to him. He complains about it, and as he tries to pry the cat away from Kanagi, Akane asks if they have heard the rumor of a new squad being formed. Kanagi has not heard anything about it, so she clarifies that a brand new squad is being assembled to fill the void left by Makoto's fallen team. The commander of this new unit will be chosen from the member with the most impressive achievements. Kanagi does not seem to take this news seriously, but Akane has something much deeper on her mind. She explains that the true question is not who will be chosen as captain. It's if Kanagi himself desires to create his own unit. At first, Kanagi dismisses it as a joke, but then he stops, realizing the true gravity of her words. Kanagi asks Akane why she would say such a thing. She clarifies that there is a deep yearning within the anti-prophecy, as there is rumored to exist a power in the world strong enough to erase all prophecies from existence. Kanagi is completely stunned by this new information, and Akane confesses that she too desires to find such a power. She elaborates that every member is searching for a powerful, iron-willed leader, and she believes Kannagi possesses the skills to be a truly capable squad captain. Just then, Akane's own squad captain summons her. This forces her to excuse herself from Kannagi and bid him farewell. This conversation leaves Kannagi lost in his own thoughts, contemplating the idea of becoming a squad commander. Meanwhile, Ichika asks Suo what he thinks about Kannagi, to which he reveals their conversation about him possibly becoming a captain. Ichika also believes that if Kannagi truly desired it, he could effortlessly take up the mantle of leader, and Suo agrees with her, lost in his own thoughts. Kannagi now looks for guidance from the founders, who seem equally unsure as to what they should advise him. As they had all dedicated their lives to serving a master, they have no real experience in the art of leadership. The mage founder, realizing their predicament, calls them all utterly useless teachers for being unable to guide Kannagi through this critical decision. Hinoki then turns to the founder of military tactics, Ryan, and requests his professional opinion. Ryan, however, refuses to get involved, stating that this is not the proper time, as there is already someone perfectly suited to mentor Kannagi. Before Kannagi can even process this, his train of thought is violently shattered by a wooden spear, which strikes the ground just inches away from it. Looking up, he sees Ichika marching toward him, commanding him not to squander his time overthinking things, and to instead resume his grueling training. With a wild, manic grin on her face, she challenges him to use his flash step technique against her. Kannagi agrees, leaping down from the high rock, and using flash step combined with ripple step to make a soft land. Ichika watches this with pure fascination, wondering about Kannagi's true origins. To her, the degree of mastery he has achieved in just 6 months is utterly impossible for any normal awakener. Recalling Hinoki's own brutal training sessions, where he had failed countless times while mastering flash step, Kannagi lets out a small laugh. But before he can get lost in the memory, he senses an immense wave of energy surging towards him. He notices Ichika is charging at him with her wooden staff, now glowing with power. He narrowly dodges as the staff strikes the rock that was just behind him, splitting it cleanly down the middle. So witnessing this is absolutely stunned. Ichika, completely unfazed, reminds Kannagi she does not care if he is focused or not. She will force him to be. Kannagi, now slightly unnerved but with his full attention, assumes his defensive stance. Inside him, Hinoki realizes that Ryan was referring to Ichika as the one truly qualified to guide Kannagi. The mage founder also realizes that Ichika is incredibly powerful for a modern-day awakener, as one would expect from Hinoki's descent. But Hinoki denies that he ever had any children, claiming it must have been his brother. Instead, he acknowledges Ichika's true strength, noting that since she trained a warrior as mighty as Makoto, she must be a living inheritor of his techniques. But as he says this, he sees her using a technique called Skyfall, something he has absolutely never seen before. This technique launches a bolt of lightning straight for Kannagi, who just barely evades it, realizing the incredible force behind the attack. Kannagi now understands that Ichika is coming at him with her full power. Ichika rockets forward and follows up with her Purgatory Sword technique, unleashing a devastating strike right at him. Meanwhile, Hinoki watches this with pure excitement, realizing that Ichika has actually created a brand new technique by honing all the ancient knowledge passed down to her. Outside, as Kannagi manages to dodge the attack, Ichika is impressed. It is a style he has never before faced, and yet he was still somehow able to evade. She praises Kannagi's own single-handed sword style, saying that it very closely mirrors the techniques of the founder. This statement utterly shocks Kannagi, and before he has time to reply, Ichika adds that he might be consumed with worry about whether he could ever become as powerful as the great Makoto. Kannagi is completely stunned, as this is the very thought that has been weighing down his soul. Su, overhearing this from the sidelines, is also taken aback. Kannagi's grip on his practice sword tightens, as he recalls seeing Makoto's legendary strength firsthand, how he was a truly peerless squad commander. This is the very reason Kannagi constantly questions if he can ever hope to reach Makoto's incredible level. To his complete surprise, Ichika tells him he does not have to be anything like Makoto. She then abruptly screams at him to pay attention, channeling her power as she executes her own sword technique, Tengu Dance, which creates a massive water tornado. She explains this technique was created by the masters of the past, who built upon the foundations laid by the founders. While these skills may never equal the founders' own power, due to the immense chasm in their strength, the masters before her never stopped striving, slowly but surely closing the gap over time. Hearing this, Kanagi at last understands what she is telling him. Ichika then reveals that she does not know the true measure of a captain, like Makoto was, but from what little she knew of him, he must have been a truly phenomenal leader. She adds that it will not be the same for Kanagi, not at first, but if he continues to hone his own skills. He absolutely has the raw potential to reach that same level. She points her wooden staff directly at him, advising Kanagi not to try to become a copy of Makoto, but instead to focus on the unique path entrusted to him. Hearing these words, Kanagi remembers the moment Makoto shook his hand. Reflecting back on that single moment, he realizes he must keep his eyes fixed upon the future, instead of getting lost in pointless comparisons. A faint smile plays on Ichika's lips as she declares that, for the sake of that very future, she will forge him into a warrior herself. With that, the two of them engage in a ferocious training session, pushing each other far beyond their limits. 2 weeks later, at the Anti-Prophecy Central Command, Hibiki and Todoroki, two of the current squad captains, are looking over the list of newly proposed squad candidates. The list, submitted by the superintendent herself, features the names of Kanagi and Ichika. Some of the members find this particular selection strange. Meanwhile, just outside of the headquarters building, a shadowy figure is speaking quietly on a cell phone, informing their contact that they have successfully breached the facility and that the new squad captain exam is scheduled to take place in 3 days. This person holds the Book of Doom and audaciously proclaims that they will soon be the new squad leader of the Anti-Prophecy. This shadowy figure is none other than Eva, a member of the 12 Apostles of the Apocalypse. Eva wields a power known as Heavenly Demon, which gives her the ability to steal the identity of anyone she kills. Her ultimate mission is to become the commander of the newly formed squad of the Anti-Prophecy and tear the entire organization down from the inside. As Midori continues his relentless crusade against the 12 Apostles, more than half of their number have already been slain. Since they are unable to defeat Midori in a direct confrontation, they have resolved to sabotage the Anti-Prophecy from within. Their creed is that they will stop at nothing to fulfill the prophecy. 3 days later, at the grand training arena of the Anti-Prophecy, the selection examination for the captain of the new squad has commenced. As all of the contestants assemble, the proctor announces that there will be a total of 4 tests, with only 4 warriors advancing to the final, grueling stage. The exam is based on a point system. First place in any test will earn you 3 points. Second place gets you 2, and third place will earn you 1. In the end, the warrior with the highest total score will be chosen as the commander of the newly formed squad. The superintendent watches on as the proctor commands all contestants to give their absolute best. In one voice, they all roar yes. Among them, Kanagi can feel the weight of every single gaze. There are 8 total candidates: Koki from the Yagarama squad, Akihina from the Yorozu squad, Sano from the Yashima squad, Hiseijai from the Kakabi squad, Sakazaki from the Tsuzaki squad, Shikami from the Todoroki squad, and Jairu from the Hibiki squad. But the true danger is that one of them is, in reality, Eva, one of the 12 Apostles, an enemy hidden in plain sight. And then there is the special recommendation, Kanagi. Unlike all the others, Kanagi stands alone as a squad captain. Ichika is nowhere to be found, having overslept, as is her custom. However, she has sent him a message warning that if he does not win, she will personally make him rue the day, determined to not be eliminated. Before Ichika can even get here, Kanagi prepares himself for the contest. Meanwhile, Ichika is rocketing towards the training grounds, riding on Sua's back. She screams at him to move faster, knowing that if they are not quick enough, they might miss the most important moments. She has absolute faith that Kanagi will be victorious, and she will not miss the moment of his triumph. Back inside the training arena, the first test commences, which is a measurement of mana. To everyone's absolute shock, Kanagi unleashes a colossal amount of energy, shattering the device and claiming an immediate first place. Akihina, from the Yorozuya squad, who is placed 5th in this particular test, is blown away by Kanagi's absolutely overwhelming power. Sakazaki has claimed 3rd place, while Shinobi has secured 2nd. Both of them now realize that Kanagi is an anomaly. Sakazaki comments that such abnormalities happen on occasion, when a prodigy in either raw physical power or mana appears in the exam. He guesses that Kanagi is a mana genius, much like another of the contestants, Shikami, who is currently ranked 7th on the scoreboard. Kanagi takes an early lead with a total of 3 points, as the proctor announces the start of the 2nd test. Hand-to-hand combat. The true battle is about to begin. Each of the contestants must now face an opponent, and a single victory will earn them another 2 points. As the proctor announces the start of the first match, Shikami eagerly raises his hand, demanding to face Kanagi in battle. Shikami is the most powerful regular member in hand-to-hand combat, and he is also considered to be a regular. When he was only 2 years of age, he was caught in the middle of a monster emergence from another world. But even as an infant in a baby carriage, he single-handedly slaughtered every last one of the monsters, shocking his own mother. He protected her and became a living legend. In the stands, Hibiki accuses Todoroki of trying to cheat by putting Shikami into the hand-to-hand combat portion of the exam. Todoroki argues that there is nothing at all wrong with playing his strongest hand, as Shikami is blessed with both an immense magical talent and an incredible degree of physical prowess. He brags that he has been personally training Shikami since he joined his squad, and to this very day, no one has ever defeated him in hand-to-hand combat. Hearing this, Hibiki begins to wonder if this match will be over in an instant, considering Shikami's combat skills are thought to be completely unbeatable. As the battle begins, Shikami approaches Kanagi and asks if he has truly been giving lessons to Hanada. Remembering the founders, Kanagi replies that he is but a humble messenger. Shikami has no idea what he is talking about, but he continues on, claiming that someone out there is advising and mentoring Hanada, who is already considered to be a super genius. He adds that even without any of Kanagi's guidance, Hanada will eventually surpass his current level on his own. Instead of getting into an argument, Kanagi simply agrees with him, which only serves to annoy Shikami even more. Completely enraged, Shikami activates Violent Bite, transforming into a monstrous beast in the blink of an eye. With blinding, impossible speed, he lunges right at Kanagi. Kanagi ducks down just in the nick of time, but Shikami immediately follows up with a powerful claw strike. Watching this, Todoroki is ecstatic to see his protege going all out. As Shikami swings with his entire being, Kanagi deftly sidesteps the furious attack. Seizing the opportunity, Kanagi shifts into Kudu's stance, grips hold of Shikami's wrist, and with an incredible display of force, slams him into the ground. The impact creates a colossal shockwave, sending stone flying across the arena and stunning everyone watching. As the dust begins to settle, both Kanagi and Shikami are now airborne. The other contestants are completely in awe. Despite the fact Kanagi had only redirected Shikami's own attack, the sheer, raw power of it was enough to decimate the whole battlefield. Even Kanagi himself is impressed by the depths of Shikami's strength, though Shikami believes he is just being sarcastic. Despite the devastating blow he just took, Shikami lands safely back on the ground, shocking everyone that he managed to do so, considering the state of the destroyed arena. Akihina, analyzing the fight on his personal laptop, remarks that this outcome was a foregone conclusion. Shikami's physical augmentation is irregular, and the sheer durability of his body is far beyond that of any normal awakener. Regaining his composure, Shikami charges at Kanagi once again. Kanagi understands that simply countering Shikami's brute force will not be enough to secure his victory. He must now try something entirely different. Unleashing his founder's power, he delivers a deceptively light kick to the charging Shikami. He then amplifies the attack using the penetration technique, Luminous Kick, striking Shikami multiple times while he is still in midair. Everyone watches in shock as Shikami comes crashing to the ground defeated. The proctor immediately steps in, stopping the match before things can escalate any further, and declares Kanagi the winner of the bout, awarding him with 2 more points. The other squad members are completely astonished. This man just physically dominated Shikami. Despite Akihina's earlier assertion that he was an irregular, Akihina, now furiously clacking away at his laptop, had not anticipated Kanagi to be so skilled in hand-to-hand combat. He had at first assumed Kanagi would be eliminated on his own if he was simply left alone. But now it is abundantly clear that Kanagi is becoming a major obstacle to his plans. As Shikami finally regains consciousness and opens his eyes, he is stunned to see Kanagi weaving some kind of spell over him while he is still lying on the ground. Kanagi calmly reassures him that he is only healing his wounds, which only serves to astonish Shikami even more. An irregular in both mana and physical combat, and now he is capable of healing as well. It seems almost beyond the realm of belief. Shikami, still trying to process what has just happened, asks Kanagi if there is anything at all he cannot do. This question makes Kanagi think back to the time he so desperately tried to resurrect his fallen Makoto squad members but had failed. After healing Shikami for some time, Kanagi tells him he should be able to get back up now. As they're talking, a loud explosion suddenly erupts nearby. That it is the final match of the hand-to-hand combat exam. Shikami, now looking concerned, wonders how long he has been completely unconscious for, realizing it must have been a considerable amount of time. Kanagi calmly informs him that it has only been about 5 minutes. According to Kanagi, right after their own fight, the other matches all began at the same time. 2 of the other pairs finished in an instant. But Akihina and his Seijai are still clashing, even after 5 full minutes. Both of them remain resolute, exchanging a never-ending flurry of blows with their full power. As his Seijai charges headlong at Akihina, she shoves him back with a powerful counterattack, mocking him for his lack of any special techniques. She taunts that without any unique skills or abilities, he is completely unfit to be a captain. Akihina steadies himself and fires back a retort, stating that he is not the type of person who tries to stand out. According to his own philosophy, even if a perfectly normal person were to take on the role of captain, death would be the only certain outcome for them. He is certain that a captain must possess the ability to adapt to any given situation in order to raise the survival rate of every single squad member, even by just a single %. Akihina declares this is his ultimate goal, ensuring that he will not meet the same fate as the doomed Makoto squad. This declaration cuts deep into Kanagi's soul, as Akihina is speaking about his fallen comrades in such a cold manner. Shikami also takes great offense and warns Akihina to watch his mouth. Back in the fight, his Seijai executes her disciplined chains word technique, creating a whirlwind of pure energy as she charges right at Akihina. Even though Akihina manages to block the attack, the sheer, raw power of it sends him crashing to the ground. His Seijai immediately follows up with yet another strike, but just as she is about to make contact, Akihina unexpectedly throws in the towel. The proctor immediately calls a stop to the match, declaring his Seijai to be the winner, leaving her in a state of utter shock. Another squad member quickly has to restrain her as she seethes with rage, furious that Akihina would give up so easily instead of putting up a real, honorable fight. Akihina, on the other hand, claims that he had expected the fight to last for much longer, so he made the decision to conserve his strength for the upcoming test. As he casually strolls away, he knows that he could have easily defeated his Seijai if he had tried, but he does not want to show his full hand just yet, especially with Kanagi watching the fight so intently. The second stage of the grueling exam, hand-to-hand combat, now concludes with Kanagi at the top of the scoreboard with 5 points, followed closely by Snanob with 3. The proctor announces a 30-minute recess before the beginning of the third examination. He also reveals that in the very next round, the 4 contestants with the lowest scores will be summarily eliminated. As the much-needed lunch break begins, Kanagi starts to wonder about Ichika and who should have been here by now, but are still nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, outside of the anti-prophecy headquarters, Suo finally arrives, carrying Ichika on his back, completely exhausted from the long journey. He is confused when she starts to walk towards the courtyard, instead of the main training grounds. When he begins to question her, Ichika reveals that she can smell the lingering traces of an aura, one that indicates someone has very recently died there. According to her, it seems to be the residue of an awakener who was killed by an overwhelmingly powerful monster. Hearing this, Suwa is completely stunned. If an awakener was truly killed on these grounds, it means that someone has managed to infiltrate the anti-prophecy headquarters, despite this place being a closely guarded secret. Ichika contends that the 12 apostles are powerful enough to have figured out how to locate this place. This shocks Suwa even more. When he asks her about their possible motivation, she completely ignores his question and instead suggests they make their way to the training venue. In her own mind, however, she is certain that whoever was killed was likely at the level of a squad captain, but with no official records of any such incident. The situation is becoming more and more mysterious. And now, not only Midori, but also Ichika, Suwa, and most importantly, Kanagi are all now working towards the very same goal, avenging the death of Captain Makoto. During the lunch break, as everyone tends to their wounds, eats their meals, and makes casual conversation, Akihina sits all alone, fixated on his laptop. Meanwhile, Kanagi, who is sitting with Shikami, becomes excited when he spots his comrades. Ichika and Suwa finally arrive. The entire atmosphere of the room shifts as the others grow tense upon seeing Ichika, one of the 5 elite members of the Anti-Prophecy Special Task Force, alongside Midori. So, observing the gathered captains feels a growing unease. Ichika had stated that a captain had been assassinated, and yet all 7 of the captains are here in the training arena. Hearing this, Ichika smirks and beckons Kanagi over to share some vital intelligence. She tells him everything, shocking him with the revelation that one of the captains may in fact be a member of the 12 apostles in disguise. According to Ichika's assessment, the probability is extremely high, based on the aura residue she had detected in the courtyard. The person who died was unquestionably on a captain's level, and yet all of the captains are present and accounted for, making the entire situation incredibly suspicious. Logically speaking, it should be impossible, but if someone has assumed the identity of the victim, then there is definitely an imposter in their midst. Realizing the immense potential danger, Kanagi grows tense, and Suwa agrees with him. The person who just assassinated a captain-level warrior is standing right here among them. I know, it's an Among Us reference. Cheeky. Suwa fears that if they do not resolve this problem, and soon, there may be even more victims. If they allow this to continue, there is a chance that a prophecy, on a level where human extinction is guaranteed, might manifest. However, Ichika, with a truly wicked grin, suggests a far more savage and brutal approach, killing every single person here to neutralize the threat entirely. Suwa and Kanagi immediately reject this insane idea, arguing that they only have to identify and eliminate the one member of the 12 apostles who is hiding among them. Ichika, now looking excited, points out that if they're truly facing the 12 apostles, this may be their one chance to get revenge for Makoto. After all, they're the ones who are responsible for his death. She asks Kanagi if he feels the same way, and as he remembers what happened to Makoto and his entire squad, he confirms it. Suwa, clenching his fist tightly, also recalls everything that was done to his older brother, the founder of detectives, for his insight. Asher advises inspecting the crime scene firsthand, but with the examination currently underway, he knows that course of action is impossible. Kanagi considers a mad dash to the side, since a few precious moments remain before the break ends. However, Asher warns this move could alert their court if the apostle they now face wields power like the one from the frozen mountain. He could easily annihilate everyone here on a whim. They must be prepared for that eventuality. Heeding this dire warning, Kanagi resolves to visit the grounds after the day's tests conclude, but questions if it is even possible that even the legendary founders would fail to detect any aura at the scene of the crime. Hinoki then reveals for the past month they have been near a volcano where he trained and perfected his one-handed sword style. He clarifies that the volcano might be disrupting the natural flow of their chi, which could make it nearly impossible to sense any residual energy. The mage also declares that if an aura is only detectable up close, it is undeniably the work of a 12 apostle-class enemy. Asher, annoyed that they're encroaching on his detective work, is about to object, but Hinoki quickly silences him, suggesting they focus on catching the killer so he can end him. Returning to the matter at hand, Asura instructs Kannagi to pose a question to Ichika. Kannagi then asks if it is possible the apostle infiltrated as a candidate rather than posing as a captain. This catches Ichika by surprise, but after some thought, she admits that it's plausible if they are considering the captain candidates. However, she warns they cannot yet discount the squad captains from suspicion. Kannagi understands, and an idea begins to form, a plan he will use in the next test, assuming it will test their combat prowess. But just a few short minutes later, the proctor announces the beginning of the third stage of the examination, revealing that it will be a written exam. This news completely stuns Kannagi. The candidates are isolated in private rooms where no mobile phones are permitted, making it utterly impossible for Kannagi to learn anything more about the hidden enemy. The exam is based on the bylaws of the anti-prophecy, a subject Kannagi knows absolutely nothing about. But he grits his teeth and refuses to fail, determined to somehow see this through. When the test is over, the proctor reveals the results. Kannagi has failed to gain a single point, while Akihina has vaulted to second place with 3 points. The final 4 contestants, including Shikami, have been eliminated. Kannagi feels a deep shame for getting the lowest score on the written exam, but as he stands there, fuming, Shikami approaches him and offers encouragement, telling him that he performed admirably. Both Kannagi and Shikami received a 0 on the written test, but Shikami is especially angered that Akihina earned a perfect score. Despite this, he praises Kannagi for holding on to first place and promises that he will be rooting for him. In the second half of this grueling exam, he wonders who will be named the new squad commander and adds that after the captain has been decided, the superintendent will also assess if the newly created squad can function as a proper unit. Shikami clarifies that the minimum number of members for a squad is 7. This means the new captain must recruit 6 additional members. He advises Kannagi that he should begin to consider which candidates he plans to recruit once he is named the new captain, placing a supportive hand on Kannagi's shoulder. Shikami offers to be his first squad member, touting his own incredible physical prowess. Then, with a wide grin, he walks off, wishing Kannagi good luck for the rest of the exam. As Shikami departs, Asher appears before Kannagi and tells him to go to the crime scene. But something in Asher's confident tone makes Kannagi realize he has already unmasked the true culprit. Asher confirms this theory, but states that he still requires hard evidence to make his official deduction. He then declares that it is now time to go on the offensive against the 12 apostles. The mage explains all of the events that have transpired so far and reveals that Detective Asher is assisting Kannagi with his deductions and methods. This annoys Hinoki, as the mage is speaking in a very roundabout way, but she is doing this on purpose to add levity with her narration. They are now at the scene of the crime, where Asher takes control for Kannagi and begins to survey the area. As he had predicted, everything here confirms his suspicions, with the victim's identity now confirmed. He also now knows the true identity of the murderer. Hearing this, Hinoki realizes that their enemy is, in fact, one of the 12 apostles. This means he may have also acquired the Book of Doom, the very same one the previous apostle had possessed. The mage then asks what their next move will be. Just as Kannagi is about to answer her, he suddenly feels a powerful surge of energy and is pulled into a strange, cloudy dimension. There, he meets an elderly woman who, when asked her identity, simply says she is a granny passing by. She asks him about his current investigation, and Kannagi informs her that a murder has been committed. The killer has assumed the form of another person and appears to be a highly skilled warrior. Upon hearing this, the granny asks if they should find the culprit now. However, Kannagi explains they already know who the killer is, not through mere speculation, but with undeniable proof. Despite this, he admits that he cannot yet reveal the truth. The granny is perplexed, as she believes that exposing the killer and eliminating them on the spot would be the most logical course of action. But Kannagi argues that while it might appear that way, there are, in fact, 2 culprits instead of just one. He insists it would be more prudent to take them both down at once, when they are both in the same location. He decides he will handle the matter in the morning, but requests that the old woman, who is actually the superintendent in disguise, refrain from getting involved and simply watch. She smiles and wishes him the best of luck, and reiterates that she is just a passing old woman who will not interfere. As she is about to depart, Kannagi reveals his own name to her, prompting another kind smile from the old woman. Suddenly, a powerful surge of energy courses through him, and he returns to his own body once more. In a top-secret location, the assistant questions the superintendent, asking if it was a wise decision to leave things as they are. The granny, however, assures her that she has no reservations, as Kannagi seems to be very close to the truth and appears to have a plan. She claims that she is merely intrigued to see what his next move will be. She then orders her assistant to inform the other officers to provide immediate backup for Kannagi if anything should happen. The assistant agrees, but confesses that even after visiting the residual traces, she did not find anything particularly noteworthy. Still, the superintendent places her complete faith in Kannagi's words. The assistant is perplexed as to why the superintendent has so much trust in him. In reply, the granny reveals that is because of the unwavering confidence and resolve. As Kannagi walks through the forest, Shikami joins him, explaining the parameters of the next test. This exam will assess their performance based on how they would perform as a squad commander. Shikami already assumes that Akihina will lean on his strategic mind, but he voices his support for Kannagi instead. Kannagi expresses his thanks, but suddenly, out of nowhere, asks him why Shikami had intentionally dropped out of the examination. After a short, yet menacing, silence, Shikami turns to him, claiming he altered his strategy mid-exam. Instead of becoming a captain himself, he now prefers to fight in his own unique way. Under the leadership of a powerful captain, Kannagi narrows his eyes with suspicion and accuses Shikami of doing all this so he could eliminate all the most promising members of the squad. Ichika is also nearby, concealed in the trees, just in case. Hearing Kannagi's direct accusation, Shikami freely admits that he has no issue with killing someone if it becomes necessary for a replacement. He explains that during the third exam, he was unable to write a single word because his brain could only access and process information that was already stored within it, which is why he received a score of 0. Calling himself an imbecile, he concedes that it would be much better for him to simply take Akihina's body. Instead, as they emerge into a wide, open field, all of the squad captains and members have surrounded them. In the center, Todoroki is shackled to the ground, while Hibiki and another captain are standing beside him. With her typical casual and arrogant demeanor, Hibiki addresses Shikami as Mr. Apostle and asks him to introduce himself properly. Realizing his cover has been completely blown, Shikami's voice deepens as he reveals his true name, Eva, the ninth apostle. Eva then explains her unique ability, adding that she can also pull information directly from a host mind. She claims that she chose to kill Shikami because he possessed the most powerful physique among all the contenders. Hibiki smirks and asks if Eva's goal is to sabotage the anti-prophecy from the inside. Eva confirms this, but admits that since her plan has failed, she now has no other choice but to kill every single person present. But before she does that, she demands to know who was the first to see through her disguise. Hibiki gestures towards Kannagi, who is standing right next to Eva with a sinister grin on his face. Eva glares at him, remarking that she never imagined he would have the nerve to stand so close to her. She turns to face him, radiating an immense power, and demands to know who in the hell he is. But how did all of this actually happen? Right before Shikami's body was usurped by Eva, Todoroki had told him that he would be recommending him as a candidate for the new squad captain. This news made Shikami incredibly excited, though Todoroki warned him that the information was still classified and would only become public knowledge the following morning. Becoming even more thrilled, Shikami joked that despite it being a top secret, they were practically shouting it out loud, which would certainly inform everyone else. Todoroki then offered him his reassurance, stating that Shikami was one of the most powerful individuals there in terms of sheer physical might, and would unquestionably make an incredible captain. Seeing this degree of faith being placed in him, Shikami agreed, feeling determined to give his absolute best. But just as he was giving Todoroki a fist bump, something slashed him into pieces. In an instant, Shikami was cut down right before Todoroki's eyes, leaving him utterly speechless and unable to comprehend what had just transpired. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed through the air, mocking Shikami's pathetic weakness and questioning if this was truly the standard for a squad captain, candidate in the vaunted anti-prophecy unit. The figure scoffs, answering its own question, proclaiming the squad had only grown strong, thanks to powerful artifacts and their mysterious benefactor. Stepping out of the shadows, the figure introduced herself as Eva, one of the 12 apostles. and declared that she was eagerly anticipating their future. Approaching Shikami's now lifeless body, Eva invoked her heavenly demon skill, seizing complete and utter control over it. As she was channeling her dark power, Todoroki, with his legendary mighty punch, Vajra, smashed her entire body into a splatter of blood. Tearing up with rage, Todoroki breathed heavily. But to his horror, he suddenly heard applause from behind him. The very same Shikami he had just witnessed die is now clapping. He praises Todoroki for killing a 12 apostle with a single blow, just as he would expect from his master. Completely stunned, Todoroki spins around to see Shikami standing there, apparently alive and well. However, before he can even process this, his body is instantly sliced in half by Eva, who had assumed Shikami's form. With a truly evil grin, Eva then activates the necromancy dance artifact, resurrecting Todoroki as a corpse slave, now bound to her will. Now, completely under Eva's thrall, Todoroki agrees to serve her, addressing her by her true name, Eva. But before he can say anything more, she slaps him so hard it nearly sends him flying. Correcting him, she demands that he now call her Shikami, ensuring that no one will become suspicious of her perfect disguise. Todoroki nods his head, complying, and the two of them share a dark, twisted laugh. Meanwhile, back at the crime scene, Kanagi and Azure begin their investigation. Using his unique skill, Theatrical Detective, Azure rewinds time itself to witness everything that transpired there. This incredible power allows him to replay the events of the past at any crime scene, giving him a first-hand look at what truly happened. The only requirement is that Azure himself must possess the evidence and personally deduce the killer's identity, not by simply looking at the clues, but by reaching a final conclusion on his own. Additionally, this power allows him to foresee future crimes before they even occur. But there's one very significant drawback. If Azure ever fails to correctly solve a case, the skill will be lost to him forever. This means that for the remainder of his life, he will never be able to use it again. As Azure explains this ability to the founders, they're disgusted by how cowardly Eva's technique truly is, killing someone and then seizing control of their body. But the room then falls into a stunned silence, as everyone turns their attention toward Kanagi, who is now overflowing with raw mana. His rage is now completely uncontrollable. With fiery determination, he vows he will not forgive this apostle. Back in the present, still consumed by his fury, Kanagi unleashes a devastating attack, a flash reflection punch, supercharged by his penetration spell and aimed directly at Eva. He also uses the Luminance Fist, and as he strikes Eva's face, a colossal energy blast erupts, sending her flying backwards. She tries to land, but the force is so great that she skids across the ground, struggling to even get back to her feet. But as the dust begins to settle, Kanagi is shocked to hear her laughing out loud, calling him cruel. Despite being hit by multiple techniques, she still speaks, taunting him by mentioning his friendship with Shikami, questioning why he would attack her so viciously. Kanagi, having already anticipated this, knows he cannot defeat Eva with his current level of power. Eva, still recovering from the force of the punches, claims that it was nothing and mocks him, saying his attacks felt like he was merely playing a game. As the shock wave finally fades, Eva screams that these types of attacks will do nothing against her. Kanagi agrees with her, but reveals that he was never the one meant to truly defeat her. All he was doing was buying enough time for the mage founder to take complete control of his body. As the founder assumes command, she claims everything, and Kanagi's body is wreathed in raw energy. Seeing this, Eva realizes that Kanagi might be the very person the satellites had warned her about, someone who has become a completely different being. But instead of feeling any fear, she becomes even more thrilled by the challenge. With a truly wicked grin, she summons hundreds of mummies from the sky, their horrifying screams echoing through the air. She declares that life is utterly boring until one stares death in the face, so they should fight to their heart's content. Asher, watching the mummies begin their descent, remarks that they seem to be nothing more than mindless, empty shells, controlled by Eva using the bodies she has stolen in the past. Laughing out loud, Eva brags that all of these mummies possess the same physical might as Shikami, and challenges them to come at her with everything they have. Looking around, Hibiki notes that there are approximately 100 bodies, all on the very same level as Shikami, which completely shocks a candidate who is standing nearby. Kanagi, witnessing this from inside his own consciousness, finds it utterly repulsive, that Eva is using the bodies of those she has callously defeated. The mage, who is standing beside him, notes that he has changed, and so have the founders. As the mummies rocket towards the ground, the mage, still in control of Kanagi's body, declares that Eva has severely underestimated it. With that, she unleashes multiple bolts of lightning, electrocuting all of the mummies in midair and shocking Eva. The mage takes it personally that Eva would summon her minions and let them simply freefall before her, forcing the mage to strike them down before they can even land. As the charred remains of the mummies rain down from the sky, Eva is left confused, wondering what Kanagi had just done. There are those who master an unparalleled degree of accuracy through years of intense training. But Kanagi had simply used his skill without so much as a thought, and had managed to hit every single target without a single miss. The mage instructs Kanagi to stand beside her and to study her every move. Our boy finds it incredible that even though she is using a weak body, she can still cast all of her spells with perfect efficiency. Calling him closer, the mage explains that while Kanagi was only looking for power for himself, the founders, on the other hand, were desperate to wield their power through his body. Kanagi is confused, unsure of what she is trying to tell him. The mage continues, stating that even after all that has happened, Kanagi, drunk on his own immense power, still felt closer to his original goal, which was simply to become stronger. Meanwhile, all of the founders are also drunk on Kanagi's unparalleled genius. However, after experiencing the tragedy of losing a dear friend, someone who had entrusted Kanagi with the future, the mage concludes that Kanagi is now angry from the very bottom of his soul. She gestures at the founders, who are all now excited, and claims that they all prefer the current version of Kanagi. Eva, hearing this, is utterly confused. She charges at Kanagi, screaming that the law of the world is simple. The weak are trampled underfoot by the strong. Just as she is about to land a blow, an electric spark erupts directly in front of her, stopping her in the middle of her charge. Eva, bewildered, looks around and sees the sky is now raining down with lightning strikes. The mage reveals that many people think exactly like Eva, but he remembers watching a being powerful enough to shatter the very tower, only to be toyed with and then devoured by beasts from another dimension. The mage, who had to watch her own comrades fall, now fights for those who were once weak, vowing to avenge them as she walks slowly towards Eva. The mage, still controlling Kanagi's body, calls Eva pathetic, mocking her for lacking the strength to fight. Eva, on the other hand, is unable to get back to her feet, as she is being continuously blasted by the powerful lightning strikes. The mage knows that even though Kanagi had trained in the mountains, laughing on the outside, deep down inside, he was craving revenge. She ensures him that all the founders share the same conviction, that Kanagi will one day reach the same zenith as they did. Extending his hand forward, the mage assures him that if he ever requires their help, they will lend him their strength. And if he ever feels sorrow, he should point to whatever has caused it, and they will put an end to the entire prophecy. Without a moment of hesitation, Kanagi points at the now airborne Eva, and suddenly, she is struck by lightning bolts that tear her entire body to pieces. Everyone is left in a state of shock, while the proctor realizes that Kanagi resembles a young Midori, a monster in the making. As Eva's remains lie scattered on the ground, she cannot believe how this young boy not only destroyed all of her minions, but has also completely obliterated her body. Kanagi, walking slowly towards her, asks if she now finally understands their true strength, and states he has a great many questions to ask of her. He adds that he knows many who are skilled in the art of interrogation, and wants to talk with Eva about everything that has happened, but in a deep guttural voice. Eva reveals she cannot fight Kanagi in her current form, and admits that her boss was correct about it. Suddenly, a coffin erupts from the ground, and Eva calls it her trump card. Kanagi is stunned, while Eva explains that hundreds of years ago, one of the founders, known as the 10,000-man army slasher, was the one responsible for destroying the ancient tower. To Kanagi's horror, Eva unveils the corpse of Hinoki Raishiro from inside the coffin. All the founders, especially the spirit of Hinoki, are stunned that she is in possession of his earthly remains. Without another word, the mage casts a thunderbolt spell, striking down the ancient coffin. This shocks Hinoki, but the mage states that this is now the true battle, as Eva has already taken complete control of Hinoki's body. Before them, the corpse of Hinoki now stands, gripping his legendary blade. Eva, thrilled by this immense new power, declares that she can now face them on an equal foot. Kannagi, reeling from the overwhelming pressure that fills the air, realizes that this new aura is even stronger than what he felt while training with Ichika. But that is not all. With a single snap of her fingers, Eva summons hundreds of minions up from the ground, calling it the second wave. Kannagi begins to worry, but the mage reassures him that it is nothing. As Eva continues to summon her legions of minions, a sudden explosion erupts right behind her. Spinning around, she sees Kannagi's friends have arrived. Ichika, Suo, and all the others standing ready for the fight. He is not alone. Eva feels a flash of annoyance, believing Kannagi to be completely alone in this fight. As she listens to him speaking, Kannagi realizes that the corpse's voice and speech patterns are now identical to the real Hinoki's. Despite his friends having now joined the battle, they are struggling to defeat the minions. As Eva remarks that these are far stronger than before, the minions now possess a physical hardening skill, and even when one of the members unleashes their full power, the attack leaves the minion completely unharmed. To their horror, each minion now possesses a unique skill, making them truly formidable opponents. With their overwhelming numbers, the anti-prophecy members are finding it harder and harder to fight them head-on. Hibiki, who has been carefully observing the entire battle, activates her sound visualization release skill, summoning a mighty sound phoenix that vaporizes a large group of minions in a single instant. But despite her incredibly powerful attack, she remains wary, understanding that each minion's power is amplified by their unique skill set, as if things weren't already chaotic enough. Todoroki suddenly shatters his own chains and slam dunks one of the younger members with bone-crushing force. But Hibiki reacts in the nick of time, rescuing them from certain annihilation. Amidst all of this, Eva is reveling in the pure chaos, thoroughly enjoying every moment. She smugly declares that in a battle of this magnitude, only the squad captains have any real chance of survival. Hearing this, Kannagi turns to the other founders to ask for their opinions, but they all remain completely silent. He then faces the mage and asks her to let him retake control of his body. For a second, she is surprised by this bold request, but in the end, she agrees. Taking back control, he confidently mocks Eva, accusing her of underestimating his friends, something she never should have done. Meanwhile, Haneda finds himself completely surrounded by minions, but he recalls Lesson 7 from Kannagi. Channeling his fist technique, he summons a mighty dragon, using it as both a source of power and a base for his attacks. With an explosive burst of force, he kicks the hell out of every single minion charging at him. Some time ago, the founder spirit Wantak had observed Haneda's muscular, yet surprisingly flexible physique, noting his preference to rely on single-point, concentrated strikes, combined with his natural agility. Another founder, Eiler's son, had argued that while it was not a bad technique, it could be far more powerful with their direct guidance. And now, in the present, Haneda flawlessly weaves together all the techniques they have taught him, moving just like a coiling serpent, striking from every possible angle and obliterating the minions with precision. At the same time, Akane stands her ground, prepared to face the horde of minions that are now rushing towards her. She remembers Kannagi's advice about the transmute technique, which converts an imperfect material into a state of perfection. In the past, she could only create cheap, low-quality weapons. But now, she uses her alchemical skills to completely defy her limitations, crafting stone golems from the very earth itself. This is a skill she had mastered in Lesson 8, and with it, she can even shatter the hardened bodies of the minions with ease. Kannagi then asks Hinoki about Saw, but Hinoki assures him that Suo is more than holding his own. While he may not be as brilliant a prodigy as his older brother, he possesses his own unique set of talents. At this very moment, he is skillfully wielding Hinoki's own one-handed sword style, combined with the Skyfall skill, cutting down an entire swarm of minions with a single, powerful slash. He then enhances the attack, merging it with the calendula, creating a deadly, flower-shaped slash that strikes the minions in a wide area of effect attack. Her apprentice is flawlessly weaving together techniques and skills. Yet, in her estimation, Kannagi's own exploits are on another level, owing to the intricacy of his combinations. As she continues to carve through the horde, deep in contemplation, she suddenly spies a colossal fire vortex materializing before her. The spectacle leaves her stunned, as it signals the duel between Kannagi and the 12 apostles has finally ignited. However, as she zeroes in on the blazing maelstrom, her astonishment deepens when she sees Kannagi is clashing with none other than the legendary founder, Hinoki. Eva charges Kannagi, employing Hinoki's one-handed sword art, fused with the devastating wave-cutting blade technique. However, our hero masterfully sidesteps the assault with Goku-like precision, as if an ultra instinct. Despite missing its mark, Eva's blow completely annihilates the ground beneath them. Kannagi instantly counters with the mage's thunderbolt attack, but it barely registers on a being as powerful as Eva. She strikes back with her catastrophic dice/skill, dicing the entire landscape into innumerable floating cubes, even slicing through her own minions in the brutal assault. But our hero miraculously survives, leaping onto one of the levitating cubes, and remembering he has weathered this very technique with his own flesh before this. Meanwhile, as the battlefield is reduced to a chaotic mess of shifting cubes, the other members fight just to maintain their balance. One warrior desperately grabs onto another, who is about to fall into the gaping chasm below. But before a rescue can be made, the dice slash severs the rescuer's arm, sending the other plummeting downwards. As she plummets, still gripping her comrade's severed limb, Kannagi spots them in the nick of time. Without a moment's hesitation, he conjures a bubble spell, raising them all back to safety. The mage's spirit, growing ever more concerned, turns to Hinoki, asking what their next move should be. But Hinoki simply leaves the choice entirely up to her, telling her to do as she sees fit. She agrees, and just as Eva unleashes Splitting Cloud, a devastating beam that consumes the entire battlefield, even Hibiki, a veteran squad captain, is left utterly stunned by the absolute madness of it all. Meanwhile, Eva is ecstatic with the capabilities of Founder's vessel, marveling at how perfectly Hinoki's body is engineered for combat. But despite this immense power, Eva feels a compulsion to use an even more powerful skill. Activating Inoki's legendary secret technique. Indomitable, she prepares to land the final blow. But to her absolute horror, Kannagi catches her blade with his bare hand. Hinoki's spirit watches, completely unimpressed, while the mage tauntingly claims that even when Eva is piloting Hinoki's body, he is still pathetically weak. Hearing this, Eva screams out in pure frustration, demanding to know how a Founder's legendary vessel could ever be considered weak. Desperate for an even greater power, she frantically delves deep into Hinoki's own memories, trying to unearth something far more powerful. As she forces her way deeper into Hinoki's psyche, her own eyes begin to well up with tears, as if she has just witnessed something truly horrifying. Eva's tears are born from the crushing weight of Hinoki's past, back when he was still alive during the dreaded Age of Towers. Just seeing this memory drives Eva to the very brink of insanity. In a vision, Hinoki cleaves an entire tower in two with a single arc of his blade. But despite this truly godlike display of power, he becomes colder and more withdrawn with every successive battle. Eva cannot begin to fathom how a mere mortal's wisdom and skill could ascend to such an impossible level. Hinoki's memories are filled with endless acts of pure destruction, severing human bodies, cutting down legions of monsters, slicing through the very ocean itself, and even wounding the planet. The sheer weight of these memories shatters Eva's own spirit, leaving her crumbling under the immense pressure. She desperately wonders where she is supposed to go, how she could ever possibly grow any stronger. But the weight of it all is simply too much to bear. Her very essence begins to crack, feeling as if she's about to shatter into nothing at all. Hinoki's spirit, unconcerned and completely at ease, simply comments that Eva's spirit should just break. However, another founder quickly warns that if it does, it will go completely berserk, slaughtering everyone around. And to their horror, that is precisely what happens. Eva's spirit shatters. She lets out a soul-piercing shriek, so powerful that it is felt even in the faraway city of Takasaki. The sheer force of the scream triggers a city-wide evacuation. As the citizens check their phones, they learn that the source of the aura is emanating from Nagano Prefecture, a mind-boggling 100 kilometers away. And yet, despite the distance, the shockwaves are still reaching them. Panic begins to spread as people fear the end of days has finally come, or that some ancient, monstrous god has been awakened. Back on the battlefield, as Eva's shriek echoes, the very stones begin to float off the ground. The overwhelming aura presses down on every single person there, weighing on them like a physical force. The weaker members begin to cough up blood, their bodies pinned to the ground by the sheer, crushing pressure. Kannagi, witnessing this nightmare, screams for Hinoki, but the ancient spirit remains unconcerned, still relaxing as if nothing at all has happened. He simply states that he has left everything up to the mage, and the mage agrees. Meanwhile, as Eva takes a step toward Kannagi, the mage raises her sleeve, revealing the seal of truth on her arm. With an air of absolute certainty, she declares that if she must use Kannagi's body, she will end this battle in a single strike. As she unleashes the power of the seal of truth, Kannagi's body begins to radiate with a colossal amount of energy. Witnessing this display, Akane is in a state of utter disbelief. The alchemist spirit inside Kannagi speaks, telling both him and Akane that they must observe very carefully. He explains that whether one uses magic or alchemy, they are all seekers of the ultimate truth. And in this very moment, Kannagi will touch one of those truths. As he continues his explanation, Kannagi's arms become covered in the very same seals that the mage once had. The alchemist spirit begins to wonder if Kannagi's physical body can endure the fragments of this truth, or if it will simply disintegrate under the weight of such power. Meanwhile, Eva's soul has already been shattered into countless pieces, and the only thing now animating her body is the fading residue of her own spirit. And yet, the body moves on pure instinct, guided by its primal urges, just like a savage, wild animal. Hinoki, who was once so mature and so composed, had abandoned his body to this very state long, long ago. And to describe this terrible phenomenon, they call it truth ignorance. As Eva becomes even more enraged, she unleashes a massive surge of dark energy, her aura twisting and warping the very air around her. The mage, witnessing this, foresees a future where this energy grows so overwhelmingly powerful that it will end up destroying everyone, including Kannagi, and even affecting people across the entire continent. Eva could very well bring about the end of the world. In that single instant, Kannagi, understanding the true gravity of the situation, recognizes the danger present in that vision. The mage then invokes one of her ultimate skills, Magus of Truth, a technique specifically created to counter the skills of its target. This technique is so incredibly powerful that the world itself can barely contain its immense force. As Eva channels dark energy into her arm and swings it at Kannagi, he effortlessly stops her attack dead in its tracks. To her shock, he grips her hand with an iron vice. In that moment, the mage channels a searing light attack, creating a massive burst of light between the two of them, completely engulfing the entire area. As the brilliant dust settles, Eva has been reduced to nothing but a charred skeleton, while Kannagi still has her hand in his grasp. The mage, still using Kannagi's body, bids a final farewell to Eva's now dying soul, as her ashes are carried away on the wind. The other founders observe this with grim determination, but Hinoki rises, clearly irritated by the fact that his soul and his body are now two completely separate entities. The mage smiles and turns back towards Kannagi, asking if what he has just seen will aid him in his training. As Kannagi retakes control of his own body, he is stunned to see that the field is now completely clear, with all of his comrades now cheering for him, as if he had single-handedly won against the monster. Ichika, however, is worried that he did not use his sword at all, making it seem as if her teachings had no effect on him. Haneda sighs in relief, while Suo praises Kannagi, saying that he incinerated that powerful enemy with a single attack. However, Akane has a much deeper understanding. She realizes that Kannagi had completely dissected his opponent's skills and had rendered them utterly useless. This realization makes Akane's hands tremble, as she wonders if it is even possible for a mortal to reach that peak. Despite her own uncertainty, she gains a newfound confidence, motivating herself that she too will do the same. The proctor is now concerned about the massive crater in the field, as this was only supposed to be an examination. But things went off the rails quickly and spectacularly. Even Todoroki is now dead, which makes the proctor very annoyed, knowing that he will now have to organize another exam like this. As the members are trying to gather themselves, one of them notices a strange, bright circle and becomes terrified. The proctor is also completely stunned, but to everyone's utter surprise, is the superintendent Kanagi. Seeing the superintendent, remembers that this is the old woman from his consciousness earlier. The woman's assistant, who is with the superintendent, is also a little confused as to why she is here. But the superintendent suddenly kneels down before Kanagi, proclaiming that she has been awaiting his return. She says that she has waited for hundreds of years for the founders, and now they're at last standing right before her. Suo and the others turn to Ichika, demanding answers, but she simply says that they should have already known, though this may be their very first time seeing her. According to Ichika, the old woman is one of the founders of the anti-prophecy, and she holds the highest possible rank in the Japanese branch. Suo, frustrated, exclaims that they are already aware of that. But what is truly baffling is why she is kneeling before Kanagi. Ichika admits that she does not know either. Meanwhile, Kanagi is just as confused as they are, wondering why the old woman from before is now bowing down before him like this. The founders inside of him are also lost in their own thoughts. Try to remember what is really happening here, but they cannot seem to find the right answer. Suddenly, Kanagi is hit with a wave of shock as he senses her immense aura. The old woman rises and asks if Kanagi can remember her, remarking that she has grown quite old. To make things perfectly clear, she turns around and begins to shake her back, calling out to Hinoki to witness her performing the waist dance. All of the founders are completely bewildered, but then it dawns on them that the old woman is Io. Hinoki quickly asks Kanagi to switch places with him, and as he does, he offers her his greetings. This completely shocks everyone around them, and the assistants immediately take up an offensive posture, seeing it as a sign of disrespect towards their superintendent. Enraged, they declare their intention to kill Kanagi and redo the examination. However, Io, still dancing with Hinoki, tells them all to stand down, assuring them that it is fine. Hinoki playfully pats Io on the head, joking that she has already become an old granny. Hearing him speak, Io suddenly recalls that he used to talk in the same way in the past, when she was still with them. After a while, all of the members begin to repair the training arena and get back to their positions. Meanwhile, deep inside the anti-prophecy, at a top-secret location known as the Hut of Everlasting Vision, Kanagi is mesmerized by the sight of its beautiful garden. Io explains that since she cannot show her face in public often, a protective barrier is usually placed around this location so that she can live there completely undisturbed. Kanagi asks if she is familiar with all the founders, to which Io begins to tell him her story. She reveals that she was once an orphan, having lost her entire family during the Age of Towers. The founder rescued her and raised her as his own. Kanagi is stunned to learn that she was only a child. During that time, when Io says that was 300 years ago, he is even more shocked, realizing she is over 300 years old. She then reveals that she has been able to stop aging by using an artifact that freezes time, as long as she stays within the confines of the headquarters. Hearing her mention the artifact, Kanagi suddenly remembers them. Meanwhile, Hinoki's spirit explains to Valentine that the artifact works in a similar way to her preservation skill. Valentine agrees, stating that in her prime, she could have accomplished the very same thing with her own power, but she wonders where Io could have acquired such a powerful artifact. Io explains that within the anti-prophecy, there is a covert division tasked with gathering artifacts, and their very existence is kept a secret, but she reveals that the facility that houses these artifacts was attacked recently, resulting in the theft of a large number of them. In response to this, a special task force, which includes Midori, was assembled to recover the stolen artifacts. The detective found her inside of Kanagi, wonders if this attack was carried out by the 10 apostles, which would explain why they are so powerful in the current era. Kanagi is stunned at how quickly the detective made that connection from such a brief and simple conversation. The detective then reveals that when Eva mentioned her boss as the one who gave her the artifacts, he looked into her memories and confirmed it. Another founder explains that instead of recruiting 12 awakeners, more powerful than Makoto, It would be much simpler for their enemy to use artifacts to enhance the power of mediocre awakeners. Hinoki agrees, noting that the two enemies they had previously fought were not nearly as powerful as Makoto. Io also agrees with this, stating they were unaware of the 12 apostles' existence until they had raided the facility. She explains that the apostles now wield the same power as the anti-prophecy's greatest enemy, making them far too dangerous to ignore. She adds that they're doing their very best to hunt down their leader, but it seems as though Midori will reach them first. This revelation shocks Kanagi. Meanwhile, in Detroit, Michigan, the city streets are completely deserted, in an area that looks like a war zone. A turbulence spell suddenly creates a massive tornado, slamming into the ground with incredible force. At the epicenter of it all is Midori, who has just made a truly shocking discovery. They had all assumed the 12 apostles consisted of 12 members, but there's also a 13th member. Watching him through a magic orb, a man relaxing on his sofa smirks, impressed that Midori has arrived sooner than he expected. With a sinister tone, he casually asks whether Midori would prefer a cup of coffee or black tea. Without a single hesitation, Midori chooses death for him, addressing him by his proper title. Number 0. Midori launches another turbulence beam at the floating Number 0. The beam is so immense that far in the distance, another member of the special task force, Nishina, notices it, Mikado, who is also with him, so they should all be fine. But he is confused as to why Midori is using such a powerful attack. As they're discussing this, they suddenly sense a powerful attack coming their way. Just in time, they leap off the rooftop of the building, which is instantly sliced clean in half. The entire structure then completely crumbles into pieces, landing safely on the ground. They decide to leave Number 0 to Midori, while they will focus their efforts on handling Kamaraji, one of the 12 apostles. Meanwhile, Midori becomes frustrated as he is unable to pierce the bubble around Number 0, even after unleashing his most powerful wind attacks. He wonders if this is the effect of a skill or perhaps another artifact. Finishing his cup of tea, Number 0 steps out of the bubble himself, taunting Midori and asking him if he is finished. Without a moment's hesitation, Midori instantly casts Wall of Cutting Pearls, launching massive boulders straight at Number 0, which triggers a cataclysmic explosion. But to his absolute shock, Number 0 emerges completely unscathed, casually comparing himself to a whale among minnows in front of Midori. Midori quickly deduces that Number 0 has other forms of defense, even without the use of his protective bubble. Seeing Midori standing silently before him, Number 0 begins to taunt him. He claims that under any normal circumstances, Midori would be so powerful and so terrifying that he would not even consider him to be an enemy. And yet now, Midori is mourning the death of his friend. To Number 0, this makes him a truly pathetic creature. He goes on to say that from the very moment Midori was born, he was nothing more than a monster, engineered for the battlefield. And yet, despite being created for the purpose of war, he still failed to protect his precious friends. These words ignite a deep and ancient fury inside of Midori. Completely enraged, he lunges at Number 0 with overwhelming power, his eyes now burning with a murderous intent. As memories of the distant past flood his mind, memories of the events that took place 23 years ago. At that time, deep within the mountains, Shinano, a special task force member, stood in utter shock, staring at a brilliant surge of energy erupting from a massive crater. Screaming in disbelief, he realized this was all that was left of the entire Midori family estate. Superintendent Io is also there, witnessing the remains of the annihilated mansion. At the center of this cataclysm, something is emitting a colossal amount of energy. As she takes a step closer, she realizes the source. It's a baby, radiating an absolutely overwhelming aura. The sheer intensity of this energy makes them believe that this entire disaster was caused by this single child's birth. Without a second thought, Superintendent Io rushes towards the infant, enduring multiple lacerations on her body due to the immense energy pressure that surrounds it. Despite the agony, she continues to push forward, finally reaching the young child. She gently picks up the baby, whispering words of gentle comfort, assuring him that everything is now fine. Now feeling the warmth of Io's embrace, the baby slowly ceases his crying. As a result, the violent surge of wind around them dissipates, revealing Io bruised and covered in blood, yet holding the child firmly in her arms. She declares that this child will now be raised by the anti-prophecy. Later, the baby is given the name Midori. 9 years have now passed, and Midori, now a young boy, is preparing to leave the facility. A teacher by the name of Hinoki Hayaradu, along with a 12-year-old Ichika, tries to stop him, warning him not to cause any trouble. The man warns Midori that if he goes through with this, the anti-prophecy will hunt him to the ends of the earth. Unfazed, Midori agrees, but as the master turns to leave, he cryptically says that this was the very reason he let Midori live. Ichika, standing just nearby, can feel the tension in the air, but then she suddenly starts to laugh. The master, annoyed, demands to know why she's doing that. Midori had always been incredibly powerful, shattering every record and seeing everyone else as weak in comparison. However, one day he meets Makoto, who casually throws a wooden stick in his direction and asks if he would like to be his partner for sword training. Midori is completely confused, but Makoto simply smiles and presents his sword in invitation. At that time, Makoto was the very same age as Midori. With that, they begin to train with each other. But Midori was completely unable to defeat Makoto in a sword fight. It angered him, but he kept on trying, constantly demanding that Makoto spar with him just one more time. Makoto, wanting Midori to learn this vital lesson, fights him again, and the outcome is exactly the same. Midori loses. Frustrated, he screams, demanding to know why he cannot win, despite his best efforts. Nishinoya, who is also present, reveals that Midori is simply too powerful, which may be the reason. Midori does not understand what he means, as he is constantly losing his matches to Makoto. A voice from outside then chimes in, saying that it is actually a compliment for Midori. The voice belongs to Makoto, who at that time was 14 years of age. Midori keeps breaking his wooden swords while fighting Makoto. So Makoto clarifies that even if Midori were to win, he would still shatter his own sword in the process. To better demonstrate his point, Nishinoya shows him an egg, explaining that when someone uses their full power, it is hard to not break the fragile eggshell. While holding it in the middle of a fight, Midori is still completely confused, so Makoto takes the egg and throws it with his full strength. However, he is shocked to see that despite hitting the ground, the eggshell does not even have a single crack. Picking up the egg, Makoto explains that Midori just needs to balance his offensive aura with the aura that is protecting the shell. And it is not a skill, but something that comes only with time. While he is explaining, Nishina throws all of the eggs at the wall, and even after they make contact, not a single one of them breaks. Midori is amazed, seeing that not one of the eggshells has shattered. Makoto hands an egg to Midori and explains that if he wants to win against Makoto in a sword fight, he must learn to adjust his own aura. Once he does that, even with his overwhelming power, he will not hurt anyone else around him. As Makoto begins to walk away, Midori calls out to him, but is then hit in the head by an egg. Makoto turns and sees that it was Midori, who wants him to join him in his training for aura adjustment. Makoto, returning the favor, tells him to apologize to him first. He then kicks the entire egg crate and uses his power to make them float. However, when Midori tries to do the same, all of the eggs explode or shatter all around him. But after trying for a long while, Midori manages to punch a hole in the wall with an egg, and it does not even break the delicate eggshell. The two of them then start to train together in swordsmanship, and now that Midori knows how to control his aura, they can spend a whole day exchanging powerful blows with each other. Seeing this, Nishina and Makoto are also excited and ask him to fight them next. For years later, Midori is accepted into the Special Task Force, and Makoto leaves to pursue his own ventures. Midori is heading towards a prophecy to support the European branch, as he has heard there's a special rank prophecy called the Pandemonium. Midori then asks if Makoto is still searching for a sword master to teach him. Makoto confirms that he is, reminding Midori of his own words about finding a master on his own. Makoto holds out his fist, proclaiming that he wants to stand as an equal with him. Midori, with a wide smile, fist bumps him, revealing that he will be waiting for him after that. Midori does everything for his friends as long as they are still alive. Midori has the resolve to continue doing what he is doing for their sake. He just wanted friends, but the 12 apostles took that away from him. Returning to the present day, remembering all of that, Midori charges towards number 0 with absolute killing intent, while the man stands there, completely unconcerned. However, just as he is about to land his attack, number 0 produces a golden egg artifact and crushes it before him. It unleashes a berserk life stampede spell, creating a massive, sun-like glow between the two of them. Other Special Task Force members also see it and wonder if it was Midori who did it. As the brilliant glow fades a bit, they see Midori emerge from within it, radiating a bizarre, yet incredibly powerful aura. Seeing Midori, Mikado asks if he has already vanquished number 0. However, Midori does not say a single word. They call out to him, but to their utter shock, Midori reveals that he does not know who they are. Nishinoya instantly realizes something much worse has happened and screams at Mikado to get away from him. But it is already far too late, as Midori now has his hand on Mikado's forehead with an evil smile. He then uses the turbulence spell, creating a powerful, devastating whirlwind. After the 3 members of the Special Force Japanese branch go missing, another Special Task Force from the USA branch, including Marquis and Ashton, is dispatched to investigate the situation. Upon their arrival, Ashton touches the ground and realizes that the residual energy in the area is incredibly strong, indicating that this was the epicenter of a massive explosion. Marquis is amazed by the sheer size of the crater Midori had created and understands why he is called the world's most powerful man. However, he is confused as to why someone as powerful as Midori suddenly vanished along with his entire team. Ashton also has absolutely no explanation for their disappearance, plunging the entire situation into pandemonium. Inside the Sanctuary of Everlasting Vision, the assistant superintendent is deeply shaken by these developing reports and finds the brutal news impossible to believe. Io, equally disturbed, demands to know if there is no trace of Midori's location. She turns to Midori's own aide, Rin, but even Rin remains completely unaware, since the powerful artifact linking her to Midori has been shattered. Io calls this a truly tragic development. As they deliberate on this very crisis, Kanagi makes his entrance, now a squad captain. He wears the captain's regal cape. He feels a bit awkward in this new position, but the assistant superintendent clarifies that his ascension came from the unanimous endorsement of every other single squad captain and the superintendent herself. Kanagi had even vanquished Eva, leading the council to believe he is the only warrior worthy of filling the void left by Makoto. Kneeling to the floor, Kanagi remembers his solemn oath to eclipse the founders with all haste and to ensure no more lives are lost. He thanks them for this great honor, and with the founders' power behind him, he boldly, and with conviction, states he will meet their expectations of the anti-prophecy. Hearing his vow, Io becomes ecstatic, claiming she had always known he was the only candidate truly suited for the captaincy. But her demeanor then grows serious as she gets to the point, asking for his insight on a most urgent matter. A short time ago, Kanagi, who had been chasing down members of the anti-prophecy to offer them a place in his new squad, now finds himself seated before the superintendent, being asked for his counsel. The entire situation has escalated at lightning speed. As the superintendent is speaking, a doorway suddenly materializes from thin air behind Io, emblazoned with the image of Tiger. This sudden appearance completely shocks Kanagi, and as the strange door swings open, Io presents 2 members of the elite Special Task Force, Nishina and Makadu, both of them in a horribly wounded state. Io reveals that Nishinoya and Makoto were part of the same Special Task Force as Midori, and are the only 2 souls who know what truly transpired. Makoto begins to recount that while they were in Detroit, Midori's body was possessed by the leader of the 12 Apostles. This shocking revelation leaves Kanagi completely stunned. Makoto continues his tale, stating that the ability used to seize control of Midori seems to be very similar to the one Eva had used before. He theorizes that it was likely caused by another artifact, though the details of this artifact are not important right now. The most critical detail, Makadu stresses, is that Midori, once the sworn protector of his friends, has now been twisted into an enemy of all humanity. This nightmarish truth rattles Kanagi to his very soul. Makoto adds that Midori resisted this control as long as he could, buying enough time for Nishinoya and Mikado to escape before he fell. Midori had apologized and made one final request. He asked Kanagi to defeat number 0 in his stead. Hearing this, Kanagi is left completely speechless, crushed by the sheer weight of Midori's final words. The assistant superintendent places a hand on Kanagi's shoulder, expressing his extremely high hopes for him. However, he reminds Kanagi that he still has not met the minimum requirement of 7 members for his new squad. Currently, Kanagi has Honda, Akane, and Sual, but he must quickly recruit 3 additional members. This, the assistant superintendent declares, is now Kanagi's most immediate mission. Hearing the urgent demand to recruit more members for his squad, Kanagi rushes out to find suitable warriors. He lays eyes on a young boy from the Hibiki squad and immediately starts to chase after him, begging him to join his new team. The boy, however, is visibly flustered and runs around in a complete panic, shouting that he will never abandon the Hibiki squad under any circumstances. Just as the boy believes he has escaped, he runs smack into Akane, who is standing calmly, blocking his path, holding a permission slip signed by Hibiki himself. The boy is flabbergasted, unable to believe that his captain, Hibiki, would ever allow him to leave. But after he reads the letter, his disbelief turns to shock as he realizes it is genuine. With great reluctance, he agrees to join Kanagi's new squad. With that, Kanagi and Akane have claimed their 4th new member. Meanwhile, somewhere outside, Haneda is trying to recruit Akihina for the team. His own approach, however, is anything but by the book. He performs a bizarre, exaggerated leg-stomping motion as a form of invitation, which Akihina finds completely and utterly baffling. Haneda insists it is a direct order from the captain and declares that he desires Akihina for their team. Akihina, however, refuses him point-blank, explaining his goal is to enter the next captain's exam, since a position has opened up after Todoroki's death. Completely undeterred by this rejection, Haneda suddenly launches a powerful kick right at Akihina, testing his reflexes. To Haneda's complete surprise, Akihina effortlessly evades the powerful attack, displaying his own unique evasive maneuvers. Impressed, but far from defeated, Haneda continues to press on. Akihina, now intrigued by this, proposes a challenge. He will agree to join the squad, but on one condition. Haneda must land a single touch upon him within 60 seconds. In the courtyard, if Haneda can succeed, Akihina will gladly join their new team. Haneda confirms if he can use any means necessary to do this, and upon getting Akihina's full approval, he summons the glowing dragon spirit around himself, determined to win this high-stakes challenge. Akihina begins the countdown on his laptop, somewhere inside the limestone cave of the anti-prophecy unit. Akihina meets with the captain, Surukai, who appears to be fishing in a 17th dimensional rift, known as the Underjaw. Surukai explains that sometimes he catches very big fish there. Noticing Akihina, he then asks if he is applying for the replacement exam for the Todoroki squad. Akihina confirms that he is, but says that he wants to be a captain who does not wish to die. Surukai replies by telling him his goal is still within reach, without even having to become a captain. This shocks Akihina, who asks if the captain thinks he is not suitable. Surukai, while reeling in a monstrous shark, claims that he believes Akihina is lacking something. Returning to the present day, Haneda is charging full speed at Akihina, who is trying desperately to avoid any physical contact. Despite coming inches from touching him, Haneda is unable to touch Akihina even a single time. Haneda is completely amazed, realizing that Akihina is using some kind of evasive skill to avoid his attacks. Akihina is using Omni-Egos, a skill he has tried to keep hidden from everyone for a very long time. His Omni-Egos allows him to instantly teleport to a designated spot within a 100-meter radius, although he must have visited the target location at least once before this skill can actually be used. Once it has been set, he can teleport there with incredible speed and precision. Despite Haneda unleashing blow after furious blow, Akihina manages to evade every single one of them using his skill. This proves to be quite a challenge for Haneda, but he is using it as a form of practice knowing that in the future, he will have to fight against Midori while teleporting around and avoiding these blows. Akihina asks Haneda what sort of redeeming quality he sees in Kannagi. Haneda, continuing his relentless attacks, reveals that he does not know anything specific. He then flies into a kick towards Akihina and admits that he knows about Akihina's ideal squad captain image to raise his squad survivability by 1%. Haneda finds this quite admirable, but claims he would not put his life in the hands of a captain who values the chance of survival above all else. This comment clearly annoys Akihina, but Haneda clarifies that if someone is always thinking of themselves, they will never be able to achieve the goals they are meant to. As he says this, Haneda thinks back to his childhood, when he had to see his family's bodies lying all around him, slain by a prophecy. This horrific event instilled in him the resolve to put an end to all prophecies. With that very motive, he finally understood that Kannagi has the ability to do just that, which is why he has chosen to become his subordinate. Hearing this, Akihina realizes what he is lacking to be a captain, the ability to be relied upon by others. As he refocuses on evading Haneda, he knows he is winning this battle, and he hopes to use this conversation as a reference in the future. With the countdown now at 5 seconds, Haneda starts to message someone on his phone, claiming that someone is arriving just on time. Akihina is confused when suddenly, using his calendula spell, combined with Skyfall, strikes down from directly above, completely destroying the entire courtyard where they were standing. This completely removes Akihina's ability to teleport, and Haneda seizes his golden opportunity. He leaps down off of the building and uses a flash kick to rip off a piece of Akihina's clothing. The clock hits 0, but tearing off the cloth counts as a touch, making Haneda the victor. He lands on the ground, while Suwa asks if destroying the entire courtyard was really worth it. Haneda shrugs it off, praising Suwa for his assistance. Meanwhile, in the background, Akihina is absolutely furious, but after typing something on his laptop, he calms himself down and agrees to join Kannagi's squad. Hearing this, Haneda and Suwa high-five each other, while Kannagi and Akane bring in yet another member, Iryu, who is bound in chains. Kannagi, seeing the completely destroyed courtyard, is in shock, but Suwa reveals that he is counting on Kannagi to write the apology letter for all of the damage. Haneda tries to placate everyone, suggesting that Rin could simply fix the entire courtyard. But the main problem is that they still need one more warrior for their new team. Akane does not know anyone else and asks if Kannagi has any other recommendations. Kannagi points towards the special task force members, Ichika, Mikado, and Nishina, and reveals he has already accepted them all into his squad. From this day forward, they are temporarily Kannagi's subordinates and will fight in his squad. Somewhere else, at the Watchtower, the surviving members of the 12 Apostles of the Apocalypse are holding a meeting. Only 5 of them now remain, but they are supremely confident because they possess the world's most powerful weapon, Midori's body. To them, it seems as though they are one step closer to erasing the anti-prophecy unit. Number 0 reminds everyone of their sacred motto. Everything they do is for the sake of the prophecy's emergence in this world. Inside the prophecy research room of the anti-prophecy, the assistant superintendent asks the director if he has acquired what she had requested. The director confirms it and reveals that the Book of Doom, once held by the 12 Apostles, is, in reality, a single book that was torn apart. Based on the 8 books that Midori had brought back, they have concluded that the recent incident is part of the prophecy, specifically one that concerns a special rank called Bhagavad Gita. According to him, in order to destroy the entire world, the 12 apostles require Midori's immense power, which alone is more than sufficient. Meanwhile, high above the sea, Midori and Hajime, a member of the 12 Apostles, are flying towards an unknown destination. Out of nowhere, Midori asks Hajime if he has ever read the Gita, to which Hajime simply denies. Midori explains that it is one of the Hindu scriptures, emphasizing that humans must fulfill their sacred duties with a selfless and devoted heart. According to Midori, whoever wrote a prophecy like the one that is currently unfolding likely harbored a very deep and abiding hatred for humanity. As they fly over New York's famous Times Square, a family on the street notices them, and a child, excitedly, recognizes Midori as the world's most powerful awakener. The crowd below quickly follows suit, cheering and clamoring to take pictures. They also notice Hajime, referring to him as a samurai. As the gathering swells with excitement at seeing their heroes, Midori gives Hajime the order to commence their mission. Without a moment's hesitation, Midori begins to channel an energy ball in his hand, while the crowd continues to cheer for him, completely unaware of what is about to happen. As a father snaps a picture of his own child, with Midori there in the background, Midori suddenly unleashes the energy ball into the sky, completely engulfing the sky above them. The ball then transforms into a massive tornado, and from within it, the real Midori desperately screams at Number Zero to stop, but it is already far too late. Number Zero has already cast the spell Turbulence upon them all. At the cafeteria of the Anti-Prophecy, Kanagi is busy giving a lecture when Suo rushes towards him, urgently showing him something on his mobile device. It is the breaking news. New York City is burning like hell due to Midori's attack. The report states that an awakener has attacked and destroyed the city. Meanwhile, at the Everlasting Hut, the American branch superintendent, Vice, is screaming at Io to do something, furious that Midori has just obliterated an entire city. Io tries desperately to calm him down, but this tragedy has claimed countless innocent lives. In the heart of the world's economy, New York, she reveals that it was not Midori who caused the destruction, but rather the leader of the 12 apostles who is controlling his body. She goes on to explain that they have already identified him as Warren Hastings, an Englishman. She speculates that he may be collaborating with invaders from another dimension. Vice is stunned by this revelation, while Io discloses that the 12 apostles are using artifacts that are not under the supervision of the Anti-Prophecy. According to her, someone or something is supporting them. Despite hearing her entire explanation, Vice argues that the responsibility still rests on Io's shoulders, as the man who destroyed an entire city came from their own special task force. He warns her that the White House is even considering using nuclear weapons against Midori. However, Vice knows that even nuclear weapons would have no effect on Midori, and demands to know what Io is planning to do. Back at the cafeteria, Kanagi asks Saw if he has completed Lesson 15 along with the others. Suwa confirms it, but to his shock, Kanagi appoints him as the vice captain of the Kanagi squad. He then commands him to instruct everyone to continue their lessons until they get their deployment orders. He suggests that Irene and Akihina are always arguing, so they must focus on their teamwork to achieve perfection. Suo wonders what Kanagi himself plans to do in his own free time, to which Kanagi reveals that he will be sleeping, and this time it will be a truly deep sleep. He orders Suo not to allow anyone to awaken him, and since it is a command from Kanagi, Suo accepts the order, placing his full trust in him. Back inside the Everlasting Hut, Io reveals she is planning to face Midori and the others head-on with their most powerful elite unit squad. At headquarters, Kanagi gets to his room and instantly falls asleep. In his dreams, he takes out his blade and begins to train with Hinoki, while all the other founders stand by, ready to teach him. But to Kanagi's utter shock, Hinoki instantly slashes him into pieces in a single flash. He regenerates in an instant, only for Hinoki to cut him down once again. Hinoki reminds Kanagi that it was he who had insisted on not holding back in their training, so now he will completely devour him. Saying this, he charges at Kanagi with his full might. Another founder tries to step in, but Wantak and a mage stop him. The other founders argue that, while short-term training might call for such extreme measures, Kanagi is dying too often, and his very soul may soon dissipate. However, they all know that Midori is the strongest awakener of this generation, and the current Kanagi has no chance of victory against him. It may be a desperate training regimen, but is the only path that leads to victory. The founder from before warns there may still be a limit to how much Kanagi can withstand, but the alchemist reassures her, stating that there is absolutely no need to worry. Kanagi is not a delicate man. The mage, witnessing Kanagi being sliced apart over and over again, still believes that he will be able to overcome this. Kanagi offers an apology to Hinoki, feeling an immense pressure just standing before him. It feels as if he has been cast into a raging blizzard atop a frozen mountain peak. Catching his breath, Kanagi stands up against Hinoki one more time, only to be instantly sliced in half once again. But to his surprise, He manages to cut a single strand of hair from Hinoki's head. Before, he could not even touch a single hair. But now, he has finally managed to do so, despite being killed an untold number of times. Kannagi is still determined to become even stronger. He rises to his feet again and again. Meanwhile, in Mumbai, at the gateway of India, Eridip of the Indian branch of the Anti-Prophecy Special Task Force becomes excited when he sees Midori has arrived. He reminds Midori that without him, the special rank prophecy, Blazing Fire Boss, would have reduced Mumbai to nothing but ash. With a smile, he asks if, despite them once protecting the city together, Midori has now come here to destroy it. Midori dismisses his words as being completely futile, stating that while it is his body, it is now being controlled by Number Zero. Mocking Eridip, Number Zero sneers at the idea that Midori could ever regain control. To toy with him even more, he delivers Midori's own trapped thoughts directly from his mind. Midori's voice, apologizing and begging Eridip to run. However, Eridip refuses to run away. This is his home city, and he is prepared to fight down to his very last breath. At the Everlasting Hut, Io explains the century-long war between humankind and the beings. From another dimension to the superintendent's assistants. During the Age of the Founders, it was the tower that had first appeared, followed by the crack, and then the prophecies. Throughout the long and bloody history of war, there have always been humans who have worked with these beings to destroy the entire world. As she's explaining, one of the assistants, watching the news of India's fall, becomes deeply alarmed, realizing that the enemy now seems to be making its way towards Europe. Io had expected this, but remarks that it would have been better if they had come straight to Japan. Instead, when the assistant asks her why, she reveals that since Number Zero has only just now taken control of Midori's body, he should not be able to fully wield its power just yet. Furthermore, he is now in a situation where the more that he fights, the stronger he becomes. Saying this, she instructs her assistant to summon all of the captains. She then turns to Tanjin, the male assistant, and informs him that he will also be deployed to the battlefield. Tanjin responds with a joke about how they only use him for grunt work during times of peace. However, the real shock comes when Io announces that she will personally be joining the fight as well. Meanwhile, the Kannagi squad is in the final stages of their preparations. They are the only true hope of ever defeating Midori. But until they are completely ready, Io has ordered the other squads to delay him. Hibiki and the other squad captains, visibly tense, ask how long this preparation will take. Io reveals that according to Kannagi, he needs 2 full days. She then declares their destination, the Pacific Ocean, where they will try to stop Midori's advance. The entire Japanese branch of the Anti-Prophecy assembles, preparing for the battle as Midori charges right for them. He casts his powerful turbulence spell directly at them, but it is halted dead in its tracks by Io's personal defensive magic. Midori, looking genuinely surprised, narrows his eyes, while Io smirks and taunts him not to underestimate them. A short time ago, as the captains were heading to the ocean to fight Midori, Hisagi and her squad members had run to their own captain, begging to be taken along to face the leader of the 12 apostles. The captain refused, but Hisagi, tearing up, insisted that even if they cannot make a significant difference, they can at least serve as human shields to protect the captains. The captain, along with all of the others, turns to face them and asks if they truly understand why the captains have all chosen to take part in such an unreasonable battle. He explains that even though they know they will not return, as the power levels are completely different, they still cling to the hope that their subordinates will survive and be able to carry on the fight. The captains are placing their trust in their subordinates, believing that they will take on the great responsibility of protecting the entire world. Saying this, the captains depart, leaving their subordinates behind them. While some of them break down into tears, others steel their own resolve, determined to protect the Kannagi squad until their preparations are finally complete. Even though their eyes are filled with deep sorrow, they know that they must act instead of simply crying, and they know they must act quickly. The squad captains, along with the superintendents and assistants, teleport to the ocean, where they now stand face to face with Midori, as Io effortlessly blocks Midori's turbulent spell. The other captains can only watch in amazement at her immense power. Midori, too, is taken aback by this completely unknown ability. Number Zero reading through Midori's own memories, recognizes Io as the superintendent of the anti-prophecy, a mother figure to Midori, who has always kept her true power concealed. Io, standing proudly before him, declares that this is the first time in 100 years she has used her powers on the field of battle. None of the other captains have ever seen her unleash her full might before, but now, right before their very eyes, she activates her 8-ATA mirror spell. This spell has two distinct stages. The first stage allows Io to completely nullify any ability so long as she understands its effects, granting her a 100% defense rate. The nature of this power is a direct countermeasure, combining perfectly with a mage's advanced analytical abilities. Wasting no time, Midori follows up with his blazing turbulence spell, unleashing a barrage of powerful tornadoes straight at Io. Seeing them, the captains realize that this is the same technique that burned all of India down to the ground. However, to their good fortune, Io knows this ability and effortlessly deflects. The second stage of her skill allows her to copy an ability once she has reflected it. In the first stage, as she sends her own tornadoes, they collide with Midori's and completely obliterate them. Midori, now focusing on the battle, understands exactly how her skill works, but he grows annoyed as he senses someone trying to attack him. From a side, one of the captains launches his infinite fist attack, bombarding Midori with a relentless barrage of punches. Each time that a punch connects, Midori feels his body growing numb. However, despite delivering a countless number of blows, the captain is stunned to see that Midori remains completely unfazed. Suddenly, the captain grabs Midori in midair and signals for the others to attack, while he has him restrained. Hibiki instantly invokes her sound visualization release, Phoenix, while the other captains follow suit with their own powerful abilities, striking Midori all at the same time. However, Midori counters them all with his Wall of Cutting Pearl spell, generating a massive blast of tornadoes that crashes into all of the captains. As the smoke clears away, Midori emerges unscathed, mocking Io for bringing such weaklings to fight against him. But just as he speaks, he senses a powerful aura from above him. Looking up, he sees the superintendent's assistant summoning a massive, sun-sized ball of energy, preparing to unleash it upon him. Midori immediately realizes that this ability grows more powerful the longer that it is channeled, as he attempts to summon his own energy ball to counter it. The female assistant uses her slave maker spell, shackling his hand. Midori is completely stunned. He had not expected them to have a warp awakener. Now trapped within the shackles, he is unable to cast any of his spells. Meanwhile, the male assistant finishes channeling and hurls the massive, fiery sphere right at the now immobilized Midori. Seeing the attack closing in fast, Midori realizes he will not be able to dodge it. However, if he unleashes his most powerful wind-based attack at the last second, he might be able to lessen its devastating impact. But just as he finalizes this plan, he notices another identical fireball coming from the opposite direction, created by Io using her own mirror spell. Both fireballs collide, erupting in a gargantuan explosion.